Hello, everyone. This is Lala. Recently, I redid my list regarding ranking all of the veteran men on the challenge from each of the four eras. And by veterans, I mean who have done at least 3 seasons. And I'm going to do that with the women since I'm sure my opinion on them have changed, whether they have played recently or not. And by recently, I mean All Stars Rivals or All Stars 5 or Battle for, no, sorry, Vets and New Threats. So whether they played Vets and New Threats and also as rivals, it means that I need to update their information based on the data of those 2 seasons, adding onto their catalogs, or just people who haven't played in those seasons, but my opinion has changed on them. So I'm going to be doing on the list. So I am going to do everyone from Era 1, that will be one video. Then Era 2, has their own video, then Era 3 has their own video, then Era 4 has their own video, and then afterwards I'm going to combine all four of them into one super long video. So things that I'm going to be taking into consideration. So longevity, whether them competing throughout many different decades or just competing through many different seasons. The formats that they've on, this will mainly affect the Era 1 and to a lesser extent the Era 2 women, since there are a lot of team seasons there and a lot of seasons in Era 1 that didn't even have eliminations and all that. So I'm definitely going to be considering that. Um, whether they have a good elimination record, whether they've made it to the end game many times, whether they've won many times, whether they made it to the final many times, whether they've had many early boots or not. So that's what I'm going to use for my quantifying categories. So let's just get right to it. Okay, so at 25th is Cynthia Roberts, who competed on Road Rules All Stars, Battle of the Sexes 2, and All Stars 3. There's really not much for me to say here. Road Rules All Stars really isn't a challenge season, and there's absolutely no competitive drive or competitive format. Very dated format. She was out relatively early on Battle of the Sexes, two, because she just wasn't performing well. She didn't really care like that. And then she was the first boot on All Stars 3, so 0-1 elimination record. There's really no notable success to really talk about, and she played in 2 very dated seasons and didn't really do well overall. At 24th is Montana McGlynn, who played on World Rules versus Real World, the Gauntlet 1, and the Gauntlet 2. So she's also someone who doesn't really have much success to talk about. World Rules versus Real World's a very dated format. Absolutely no one went home in that season, so there's not much to really go there. She was the first out on the Gauntlet 1, which isn't good. That was the first that's the first season with eliminations. And then on Gauntlet 2, she made it midway, but was booted there. She has a 0-2 elimination record, which is not good, and her mid-season boot on the Gauntlet team was a bit more modern than some of Cynthia's seasons, is why she is higher. But really, neither one of them have any notable success to really talk about. At 23rd is Beth Stolarzik, who played on Road Rules versus Real World, Battle of the Seasons 1, Battle of the Sexes 1, the Inferno 2, the Gauntlet 2, the Duel 1, the Gauntlet 3, All Stars 1, All Stars 3, and All Stars 5. So she's someone who played on many, many, many seasons, but despite that, she really hasn't done well in most of them. Road Rules versus Real World, the format where no one went home. Battle of the Sexes and Battle of the Seasons are seasons where there are no eliminations, but she was voted out early on both because she was so disliked. She didn't last long on the Inferno 2, though that was because she quit due to all of her power catching up with her. She did do well on the Gauntlets too, and it's the only season that she made it to the end game on, but yet again, she quit, probably because she knew she was going to be eliminated. And the eliminations definitely favored her on that season. She was screwed on the duel one where she made it halfway, but the stupid elimination will cause her to go home. The Gauntlet 3, some I guess she was eliminated like a third way through, but Yes, whatever. All Stars 1 was an okay season. She was booted midway. All Stars 3, she was an alternate brought in because there's so many quits slash DQs and she didn't last long there. And what had me bumping her lower is her first boot on All Stars Rival. So essentially, she's been a very early boot in the first two rounds. Three times she was booted early ish in many other seasons. She can win some eliminations, but they're all size based. And she has a 3 to 5 elimination record, meaning she's only won 38% of them. Essentially, she has a bit more going on than the other two, but her record really isn't good either. So at 22nd is Gisela Delago, who competed on Battle of the Seasons 1, Battle of the Sexes 1, the Gauntlet 2, and All Stars 1. So essentially, she's also someone that didn't have much success. She was the weak link on her team with Adam on Battle of the Seasons. They were booted early, but due to the stupid format, they were booted in the second to last round before the final, but it wasn't a good season for them. Battle of the Sexes 1 was another early season for her, but she's rolled out due to a lack of performance. The Gauntlet 2, she clearly threw it because she had to go to work and she didn't really care, so she's been relatively early there too. All Stars 1 is the only reason why she isn't lower, as she did make it to the final on that season. She had to go. Yeah, she did decent in some of the challenges, but she flopped on the final, hence her getting 11th place. And that's the only season that gives her some credentials, but over half of the cast made it to the final that season, so there's not much to talk about. And she has a 1-to-1 elimination record, meaning a 50% rate. And at 21st is Ayana Mackin, who played on Extreme Challenge, Battle of the Sexes 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, All Stars 2, and All Stars 4. So Ayana was able to get DQ'd on a season where no one even went home. So that is Extreme Challenge. That's not good. Battle of the Sexes 1, she actually made it pretty far on the season, not endgame far, but she held her own there. She made like I think further than 2/3 or around, like 70% way through the season, I would say. And then she pretty much asked to be voted out because she was over all of them. Battle of the Sexes 2 had her getting voted out early, because she was just doing really poor socially. All Stars 2 is the season that really is why she's up here. She got to play in a more modern format. She did make it to the final there. She had to go into a few eliminations. So that was impressive on her end. But she did do well in the final. And then she was essentially the second woman booted. Yeah, she's the second woman to leave on All Stars 4 due to her ridiculous drama. Technically, I think she's the first one voted out, taken out in an actual elimination since Janelle quit. So either way, not good. She only has one good season, and the rest are messy at best. And 3 out of 5 seasons are in very dated formats. At 20th is Trishelle Canatella, who competed on the Gauntlet 1, the Inferno 1, Battle of the Seasons 2, Rivals 2, and All Stars 1. So essentially, she's someone who doesn't do well a majority of the time, as she was the first boot on the Inferno 1. She ended up quitting second on Rivals 2, though that situation had to do with an injury that didn't air on the show, and she was booted first on All Stars 1. So, yeah, very poor track record. And the only good season that she had was Battle of the Season 2012, where she won a few dailies and won a late elimination with Dustin and made it to the final where the two of them got runner up. So, outside of that season, and I guess she won an elimination on the Gauntlet, there's really not much to talk about that's good. Inconsistent at best, too poor. At 19th is Ibis Nieves, who competed on the Battle of the Sexes 2, the Gauntlet 2, and the Ruins. Honestly, she's mainly disloved because there's not much accomplishment at all. She made it like 2/3 through Battle of the Sexes 2, not much to really talk about there. She did she ended up winning the Gauntlet too, but due to the weird formats with only the captains going into elimination and it being hard to tell who did what in the dailies and that awfully constructed final where half the cast didn't even compete in it, it's really one that you can't hold much weight towards. And then the ruin she was booted somewhat like mid season, yeah, and she has a 0 to 1 elimination record. Really, there's just nothing there, and it's hard to track her individual accomplishments. At 18th is Julie Stoffer, who competed on Extreme Challenge, Battle of the Sexes 1, the Inferno 1, the Inferno 2, and the Gauntlet 2. So her journey is kind of inconsistent. Extreme Challenge is a season where no one went home unless you're getting DQ'd, i.e., Ayana, for getting violent, essentially. She was booted first on Battle of the Sexes, one, because no one liked her in the house and she did a bunch of shady stuff outside of the game. The Inferno one, she did okay, but her bestie just caught up with her and her refusal to do an elimination or to volunteer caused her to get sent home there. Though there's always commentary about her being one of the stronger women, so I will give her that. And it seemed like that was lived up to during her final 2 seasons, where she was the second last out before the final on the Inferno 2 and helped them the good guys make some of those cutthroat political moves, and then got runner up on the Gauntlet 2. So the thing with her is that she has a 0 to 2 elimination record, so that's not good at all. And she only played in the older formats, where a lot of the formats were pretty dated and were just large team seasons. So that's one of the things that's definitely holding her back. At 17th is Katie Cooley, who competed on the Gauntlet 1, the Inferno 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, the Gauntlet 2, Fresh Meat 1, the Gauntlet 3, the Duel 2, the Ruins, Cutthroat, Battle of the Eras, All Stars 1, All Stars 2, and All Stars 5. So obviously she competed in a lot of seasons and she only made it to 2 finals, which isn't good. She did win the Inferno one. That's one where she definitely had to work her butt off to get there. And the Gauntlet 2, she got there because she was pretty calm, though she didn't get much of an edit that season. The Gauntlet 1 was an earlyish boot for her. Battle of the Sexes 2, she was kind of just in the middle. She made a political move to boot Rachel, but then that kind of backfired on her. Fresh Meat 1, I guess midway, she was booted right before the final on Gauntlet 3, but that's due to the stacked veteran team more than anything. The duel to Ruins and Cutthroats were early-ish season boots. She wasn't the earliest boots on those seasons, but she didn't really last long on those seasons either. And she was booted first on Battle of the Eras. She did last pretty long on All Stars 1, but most of the cast made it far on that season, and over half the cast made it to that final. All Stars 2, not a good one there. And she made it pretty deep on All Stars Arrival, so that kind of did help her out and give her a bit more consistency that she was lacking. When it comes to elimination record, it's bad. She won 4 and lost 9 with a 31% elimination rate. So she really just all over the place, even in the team seasons, which are easier. So at 16th is Emily Bailey, who competed on Extreme Challenge, Battle of the Seasons, and won, and Battle of the Sexes won. So the thing with Emily is that she played on the oldest of formats. Literally none of the seasons that she competed on had eliminations. Obviously, no one went home on Extreme Challenge due to the format there. Battle of the Six Seasons 1 had vote outs, but at least on the Road Rules, which was her team, they did it strategically, but people were voted out early, and then once you made it halfway, you made it to the final. And then Battle of the Sexes 1 weren't voted out too. She was playing very politically in her final 2 seasons, so I do give her props for that, but a lot of the moves that she made were pretty messy. And she ended up quitting her final season too, but she did make it to the final on Battle of the Seasons one. She could have made it to the final on Battle of the Sixes one had she not quit, but that is what she decided to do. So she never competed on a season that had eliminations either. She did win some dailies, but this her gameplay is just way too dated for me to rank any higher. And this is compared to a lot of the women on Era 1 who played dated games due to the formats. Okay, so with the women in the bottom two categories, I felt like they either had literally nothing redeemable about their games or there's nothing noteworthy either way. But with the next set of five, they at least have something there, though they all did a very limited amount of seasons, mainly in the older era, but their records aren't really bad, though they're probably a bit dated and they lack the quantitative stuff due to them having limited seasons. So at 15 is Tina Dean, who competed on Battle of the Sixes 2, the Gauntlet 2, and the Duel 1. So she had a very limited amount of seasons. She did compete in an individual season, so there is that. Um, she won the Gauntlet 2, and this is a season where she definitely had to work to get to the end since she was the captain the entire time and had to go into a few eliminations, so she definitely earned that win. She was an early boot on Battle of the Sixes 2. She was a newbie, whatever. And the dual one, she was in the majority alliance, but I think she's booted like two-thirds throughout the season, so not an early boot, but not an end gamer either. She has a 2-1 elimination record, so 66% win rate. Yeah, whatever. At 14th is Kara Zavaleta, who competed on the Gauntlet 1, the Gauntlet 2, and the Inferno 3. So she won the Gauntlet 1, and she was in a few eliminations that season that she had to win to get to the end. Guys didn't really take her seriously, but she played her part and she ended up winning the season. The Gauntlet 2, she made it far, not endgame far, but it seemed like she and Susie were causing a lot of damage within the team when it came to the dynamics. She ultimately got booted against Kina in a later elimination, and she made it to her second final on the Inferno 3, though she was definitely playing Susie's game, but it got her to the runner up. Overall, she's pretty consistent. She made it deep. She made it for an all of her seasons. She made it to two finals. She has a 2-1 elimination record, 66% hit rate. But when you look at it, I don't know how much of that was individually due to her own accomplishments. They were all team seasons and they're all older limited seasons. So at 13th, is Holly Shand, who competed on the Challenge 2000 Battle of the Seasons 1 and the Inferno 1. So she did win the Challenge 2000, but obviously that's the season where no one went home, so I don't take it that heavily. Obviously, it talked about the janky format with Battle of the Seasons 1 beforehand, where the people who go home only go home in the first half and everyone else makes it to the final. But she was booted right before the final, though technically in the season that's the midway mark, and she did win the Inferno 1, where she had to go into elimination to get there. So she made it far in pretty much all of her seasons, essentially. She was seen as one of the stronger women, but the thing with her is that all of her seasons were in the older era and have very dated formats, so I can only put her so high. But she does have a 1-0 elimination record. At 12th is Roni Martin, who competed on World Rules versus Real Worlds, The Gauntlet 1, and All Stars 3. So, obviously, her first season was the season where no one went home due to the format, where everyone makes it to the end. It's not much weight there. The Gauntlet 1, she held her own on the team. She was seen as one of the stronger women, and she ended up winning that season. She got a life shooter there. And All Stars 3 was an interesting season since she hadn't played in damn near 20 years. She really didn't know anyone like that. And it was an individual season. Though she did lose an elimination, causing her elimination record to be 0-1. She did make it to the end game of that season. And it was a modern season. So they definitely boosted her up above essentially all of the most of the other women in this category and above a bunch of other women. But the same thing with her. Most of her seasons were in older dated format. Her elimination record, not really good, but All Stars 3 definitely boosted her up. And at 11th is Kendall Shepard, who was on the Inferno 1, All Stars 2, and All Stars 3. So what's interesting about her is that she went into her elimination on the Inferno 1, and then she won the season, and then she disappeared for 20 years, and then she had a run where she was on 3 seasons within a year, and that's obviously due to All Stars 1, All Stars 2, and All Stars 3. She made it to the end of All Stars 1. She had to win a few eliminations on that season to make it as far as she did, but she lost right before the end game. And then All Stars 2 and All Stars 3 were just poor showings for her. But compared to everyone else, she has better stats. She won one, she made it to the end game of another, and she has a 3-2 elimination record, so a 60% rate. So there's a bit more there for her compared to the others, and she has more modern seasons under her belt, so we know how she would be like. So yeah. Now we are getting into the women who are hardcore vets. They have many, many, many seasons under their belt. They did expand beyond the Era 1 season, so they're not stuck in the OG dated era, and they have a lot of accomplishments, and they're very well known in their era. So at 10th is Tina Prada, who competed on the Gauntlet 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, the Inferno 2, Fresh Meat 1, the Duel 1, Battle of the Eras, All Stars 2, All Stars 3, and All Stars 4. So when you look at her original run, you definitely do see that she's getting better and better and better as a player. Not one was kind of a meh season, but she got really involved in Battle of the Sexes too. She definitely had to outmaneuver a few things and to prove herself to make it to the final round before the final there. And then she made it to the final on her next 2 seasons with the Inferno 2 and Fresh Meat 1, where she was well insulated and she had to win out when she could and be a part of the main infrastructure of the political alliances there. The Duel one, obviously, she got into that stupid fight with Beth, which took her out, where she probably would have made it decently far or very far without that. And then obviously she's not on the show for like a decade and a half. And then she comes back, and we definitely do have middling results in All Stars 2, so, where she essentially quit. She doesn't do the elimination 3. She's injured early on, All Stars 4. She makes it kind of deep there, but her performances was pretty poor. And then she was booted a bit before the halfway mark and out of the eras, despite being one of the last few veterans. So her elimination record is 5-4, so at 56%. So there's kind of yeah. So it's pretty balanced, though. I'm pretty sure if you look into them, there's kind of holes there. But she only made it really, really deep in 3 of the seasons, and when it comes to the competitive element, she's not the best of the best, so that's why she is here. At ninth is Tanya Cooley, who competed on Battle of the Sexes 1, the Gauntlet 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, the Inferno 2, Fresh Meat 1, the Inferno 3, The Island, and The Ruins. So the thing with Tanya is that she ends up pissing people off, and she's never really in the core infrastructure of the alliances in really any of the seasons. Well, the Sixers one was kind of just a mess season for her. She was booted very early on. She was second last in the Gauntlet 1, though I do think a lot of that had to do with her injury. Battle of the Sixes 2, she makes it relatively deep into the season, but not endgame deep. The Inferno 2, she makes it to the end on there and gets runner up there. She had to go into a few eliminations to really earn her spots there. Fresh Meat 1 didn't really last that long. After Austin was booted, she was sent home next due to not being liked. And then the Inferno 3 is definitely her best game. She had to perform well in the dailies, and she had to position herself well enough in the villains team so she could get to the end. And she did win the season, so I do give her that. Obviously, the island was a complete disaster, and so was the ruins, where she was booted due to her fight with Veronica. So it would have been interesting to see how long she lasted had that not happened on that season. When it comes to the elimination record, she is 3 for 3, meaning 3 wins and 3 losses, so a 50% rate. In general, it's just very rare for her to make it deep. She's rarely involved in the alliances, and we haven't seen her in an individual season or in a more modern format. So she's higher than the woman who did a few seasons and who mainly played in that era, but there's a lot of issues with her game overall. At 8 is Robin Hubbard, who competed on Battle of the Sexes 2, the Inferno 2, the Gauntlet 2, the Duel 1, Gauntlet 3, the Island, the Duel 2, Rivals 1, and Battle of the Exes 1. So there are seasons where she did make it pretty deep on, or she made it to the end game of with the Gauntlet 2, the Gauntlet 3, and the Island. Those are the 3 seasons she made it to the final on. And then her final season, Battle of the Exes 1, she was booted right before the final. And she made it pretty deep on Battle of the Sixes 2 as a rookie. So I do give her props there. And I think she was booted like midway or a bit, yeah, around midway to Duel 1, or a bit past midway there. But there are some seasons where she's booted really early, like the Inferno 2, the Duel 2, and Rifles 1, which just aren't a good look. And the main thing about her is her elimination record is horrible. So she won 1 elimination and lost 6, meaning she has a 14% success rate with the eliminations. And I think that's the main reason why she doesn't have more end games or win, because especially in her first half, she was insulated in the alliances, but that kind of fell apart from and then onwards. But yeah, that elimination record's really, really, really poor, and it really, really holds her back from being any higher. And I considered putting her lower actually, but I thought, you know what, here's fine. At 7th is Ruthie LK, who competed on Battle of the Sexes 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, the Gauntlet 2, the Duel 2, and All Stars 1. So the thing with her is that she mainly had her success on the Battle of the Sexes seasons, which has a dated format where you are voted out, not eliminated, and you're competing against the other gender. Obviously, she beasted the first season, hence her getting runner up. But while she did get booted in the endgame of the sequel season, her performance was lacking there, which a lot of the others commented on. On Gauntlet 2 and the Duel 2, she was booted like either midway or like a third way through both seasons, and she was eliminated on both of those seasons. And on All Stars 1, she did get 7th and made it to the final there. So she beat half of the people in the final, but over half the cast made it to the final on that season. And she didn't really do a whole lot there. Her elimination record is 1 to 2, so she won 1 and lost 2. So that's not a good thing. Her elimination record's not good. Um, but she played in a more modern format with All Stars 1, and that really bumped her up, though when you looked at it, it's not that impressive overall. At 6th is Anissa Ferreira, who competed on Battle of the Sexes 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, the Gauntlet 2, the Duel 1, the Inferno 3, the Duel 2, Rivals 1, Battle of the Exes 1, the Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the Bloodlines, 3030, Total Madness, Double Agents, Boy Slice and Allies, Ride or Dice, Battle of the Eras, All Stars 1, All Stars 5, and Vet and Defense. So, literally, out of all the women in this era, she's competed in the most seasons. She has played in every single era and every single format. I don't even feel like breaking down all of her seasons. First 2 seasons were pretty forgettable. She was pretty midway on both of them. She was the runner-up on the Gauntlet too, though there's comments there even back then about her poor stamina and endurance, but she got runner-up there, so whatever. First final in 4, which is an issue because you've done like how many seasons that you've only been to 4 finals? Whatever. She made it to the end game on the Duel, which was an impressive season for her, and the Inferno 3, though she was injured on that season. And then she made it to her second final on the Duel 2, which was similar to how her first Duel was. but she actually made it to the final here. Her endurance issues suffered. This would be her last final in over a decade. She was booted first in Rivals 1. Battle of the Eras 1 was not a notable season. Uh, I'm going to skip through a bunch of these because it needs that way too long. Okay. She was booted in the endgame of Rivals 2, Battle of the Bloodlines, Total Madness, and Double Agents. She finally made it to finals on All Stars 1 and Ride or Die, so yay for her. She made it pretty deep on Vet and New Threats, kind of free agents, and she had some early boots like Battle of the Eras and All Stars Rivals. Okay, so she has had success in all of these eras, in all of these formats, but she has never won, which is a huge issue, and she's only been to 4 finals, and she hasn't performed well in those finals. Her elimination records, I think at this point, it's 15-16, so hold on. Okay, so she's now at negative when it comes to her elimination record, where she lost. Sorry, she won 15 and lost 17, so she has 47 percentage rate. So the one thing that made her stand out, i.e., her elimination wins, doesn't really stand out much anymore, and is actively becoming more negative, especially in the recent seasons. Now we're getting into the best of the best era one woman, though it'll be interesting because I don't think we compare to the best of the best of the women in the other future eras, but we'll get there when we get there eventually. So at fifth is Susie Meister, who played on Extreme Challenge, The Gauntlet 2, The Inferno 3, and The Ruins. So part of me did want to have her lower because she only competed on team seasons. The Extreme Challenge doesn't really matter though. She sucked ass on that season. She did win the Gauntlet too. She was kind of messy politically there, but they knew that she was a worthy teammate to have, so she was never sent into elimination on that season. The Inferno 3 was a good season for her since she won all of the lifesavers, and there's a lot of plotting for her to get those lifesavers. When she needed to go into elimination, she did, and then the Ruin, she held her own with the man, not only politically, but competitively as well. She had to win 3 eliminations to get to the final, and she had to kind of like trick the man to get what she wanted at times too. So really, she made it to finals in all for her season, so I don't count Extreme Challenge. She won the Gauntlet 2 and the Ruin, so she had a lot of success, and her elimination record is 4-0, so she won 4 and lost none. That's great, but it's her lack of dual or individual seasons, which is why I couldn't put her higher. Honestly, if Anissa was more consistent and won a season or made it to more finals, I would have put her above Cece, but that data just wasn't there. So at fourth is Coral Smith, who competed on Battle of the Seasons 1, The Gauntlet 1, The Inferno 3, Battle of the Sexes 2, Fresh Meat 1, and The Gauntlet 3. So just looking at the seasons, she made it to the final on 4 of her 6 seasons, the first 4. She won Battle of the Seasons 1, where she and Mike played very well together. You saw her gain a lot of control on the Gauntlet 1, the Inferno. Did I say the Inferno 3? Sorry, I meant the Inferno 2. Jeez, okay. So let me do that correction. She was on Battle of the Seasons 1, the Gauntlet 1, the Inferno 2, sorry, the Inferno 1. What am I on something today? Coral was on Battle of the Seasons 1, the Gauntlet 1, the Inferno 1, and Battle of the Sexes 2, then Fresh Meat 1, then Gauntlet 3. Anyways, so on the Inferno 1, she held a lot of control on her team politically. Same thing with the Gauntlet 1. When she needed to go into elimination, she went in and she did her thing, but her whole entire thing was avoiding elimination, and she did that well. Battle of the Sixes 2 was interesting because she was with a lot of newer players and she couldn't rely on Mike since they're on opposite teams. So to see her maneuver that while being on the losing team was very interesting, and she made it to the final there too. Fresh Meat 1 was a stronger season for her competitively as she won many dailies. She worked with Evan very, very well. And this was a dual season, and I have no doubt that they would have made it to the end game at least had they not both gotten DQ due to their injuries. And then the Gauntlet 3, she was on the out. She still made it pretty far, but just due to the stacked veterans team, she won elimination against Beth. But she was definitely getting outplayed on that season, and she quit right before the end game before she most likely would have been eliminated. So the thing with Cora is that she played mostly on team season. She did do well in the dual season, but the lack of longevity really kind of hurt her. She does have a 2-0 elimination rate, so she won 2-0, and that's 100%. If she played more seasons afterwards and had that success, she would have been higher, but fourth is the highest I can go right now. So at third is Veronica Portillo, who competed on the Challenge 2000, Battle of the Seasons 1, Battle of the Sexes 1, the Gauntlet 1, the Inferno 1, Battle of the Sexes 2, the Inferno 2, the Ruins, Dirty 30, Vendettas, Final Reckoning, Ride or Dies, All Stars 3, All Stars 4, and All Stars 5. I'm going to try to keep this pretty short. If this was based solely on her first season, she would be a lot higher. I don't really count Challenge 2000, so her winning it means nothing. She was outplayed on Battle of the Seasons 1, where she was booted first because she got fourth on the daily, and the Battle of the Sixes 1, she was outplayed by Emily. So she kind of had a rough start to the franchise. It wasn't until the Gauntlet 1 and the Inferno 1 where she turned things around. She really got into the politics, and then she had to hold her own in the competitions and the dailies to get those two wins in the Gauntlet 1 and the Inferno 1. And she was seen as one of the stronger women on Battle of the Sexes too. I'm trying to remember why. I guess she was eliminated like two-thirds through the season again, just like Battle of the Sexes 1 due to, I guess she wasn't competing the best. The Inferno 2, she was very involved politically. She had the plot and scheme. Did she win an elimination? No, I don't. Yeah, she did win an elimination there, but she got runner up. She went on a long break afterwards. She came back on the Ruins, but that was a rough season for her. She was scooted around midway or a bit past the midway point. She was on the outs the entire time. She did buy herself another round with that trick move on Ebis, but yeah, not much to say there. 30-30, she had a pretty strong showing. She won an elimination. She made it pretty far. She made some interesting political moves there. But her following flagship season, so Vendettas, Final Reckoning, and Rider Dies were not good seasons. She made it halfway through Vendettas, but she got injured. She might have made it further without that. Final Reckoning was just a poor showing all around, and she was barely there on Rider Dies. Honestly, All Stars is why she is still this high, and she actually moved up due to it when she made it to the end game on both on all of All Stars 3, All Stars 4, and All Stars 5. She was in the main alliance on All Stars 3, and she probably would have made it to the final had she not gotten injured there. All Stars 4, she made it to her first final since the Inferno 2, though looking at the daily performances, she really wasn't performing that well, but final performance is a final performance. And then she got a lot more involved politically in All Stars Rivals, which got her to the end game and she was booted in the second to last round before the final. So her daily performances got weaker past the OG era, and her elimination record is not good as she won 2 and lost 4, so she has a 33% elimination rate. So at second is Jodie Weatherton, who competed on Inferno 2, the Gauntlet 2, the Duel 1, Battle of the Eras, All Stars 2, and World Championship. So she was seen as one of the stronger women on the Inferno 2, but she was booted kind of midway through the season. She just completely got outplayed there. The Gauntlet 2, I don't think she went into elimination on that season, if I'm remembering correctly. But she was seen as one of the stronger women there. She held her own on the Rookies team and it got her first win. The dual one, I don't even need to say it, but I'll say it anyway. She completely dominated out of all the women. I think she won like two-thirds of the dailies that season, and she was in the majority alliance, so she is protected all around. And it was a cakewalk to her getting that first individual win, and it's really one of the strongest performances of a woman on any challenge season. So she left for a while, roughly around two, like a decade and a half. She came back on All Stars 2. She was performing well in the season, but she got booted right before the final. I think she made it pretty deep in World Championship, but not endgame deep. And then she was out second on Battle of the Eras because she decided to volunteer to be the leader without knowing what that is. So she's strong in the dailies. That hasn't really changed, but her elimination record is pretty poor as she won two and lost four. So she has a 33% rate, and I think that's the reason why she doesn't have more finals appearances and arguably more endgame appearances. So at number one is Rachel Robinson, who competed on the Battle of the Sixes 1, the Gauntlet 1, Battle of the Sixes 2, the Inferno 2, the Island, Double, sorry, the Duel 2, Battle of the X's 1, Battle of the Eras, and All Stars 4. So the interesting thing with Rachel is that she has made it to four finals, and she's won three of them. Yeah, okay, yeah. She won three out of the four finals that she's been on, so that's a really good win to final rate. So obviously, Battle of the Eras has a rightful asterisk due to it, but I think she played a good game before the final on that season, but the final performance just wasn't good, and the karma points bailed her out. On seasons that aren't physically focused on, and when it has to rely on politics, she kind of struggles, which we saw on Battle of the Sixes 1 and 2, where she is blindsided like a third way through or close to midway, despite her being one of the stronger performers because she just wasn't showing socially or politically. The island, she was on the outs there, and she was booted right away, though she tried to make a move there. She did do well on the Gauntlet 1 and the Inferno 2, where she got a bit more involved there. The Duel 2, she was in the majority alliance and was the best performing woman, so she steamrolled there. Battle of the Exes 1, her history as Bananas came back to bite her in the butt, and she was booted midway through the season. And All Stars 4, it just seemed like she was siding with Ayana, which definitely didn't buy her any goodwill in the house, and she got booted relatively early there. So she does perform pretty good in the dailies for the most part. She's very physical, and she has several wins under different formats. So she has an individual win, a group win, and I guess Battle of the Ares is individual. So that is impressive. And she has a 4-3 elimination record. So she won four and lost three, and that's a 57% win rate. So there is that. So that is it for era one. As you see, there's a lot of variances due to the limited seasons. Some of the people who have more seasons have poor elimination records. A lot of them only played in the era where they had those older dated formats. And some of them might be good physically but not politically. Some might be good politically but not physically. There are so many different layers. It's really going to be interesting to see how they hold up compared to the era 2, 3, and 4 women. Era 2 is definitely an interesting era with a lot of the women, since I believe that they overall have the strongest of the strongest women due to many of them having so much success compared to all the women in the other eras. We do see them in a lot of different formats, since this is the era where we saw some individual seasons, obviously a lot of team seasons, and some dual seasons. So there is that. The data format really isn't as much of a thing as this era compared to era one. The one thing about these women is that a lot of them are just very stuck in their era or early era three. So the longevity for them, it's kind of weird because they've done many seasons, but they haven't played in like 15 or so years as well. So it's kind of hard to see how they would adapt in the modern day with all of that context. Anyways, let's just get right to it. This first group are literally the worst of the ones here. They really don't have much individual accomplishments and outright have poor records when you really, really think about it and compare them to everyone else. At 20th is Siobhan Torres, who competed on the Duel 2, The Woods, and Cutthroat. She was an early boot on all of them, essentially, but she was voted in and unmuted on the Duel 2. She was the first woman out on the win. She was disqualified third, I think, due to her ruptured boob in a daily. She was known as being a weak performer even then. And then she was about to go home in the third elimination, but she ended up quitting beforehand. So she never lasted long. She has a 0-1 record, and yeah, just a very poor record overall. At 19th is Mandy Moyer, who competed on Fresh Meats 2, Cutthroat, Rivals 1, and Battle of the Exes 1. So she made it like, yeah, she made it right before the end game on Fresh Meats 2, so I'll give her that. Not a great season, but whatever. And then she was out second on Cutthroat because she was seen as weaker and she was kind of getting played there too. It kind of just showed that when it comes to head to head combat, she's not really there. She was paired with Jen on Rivals 1, and this caused her to make it to her first and only final, where they did get last on and had to be essentially DQ'd on the first day because they're so far behind and the camera crew wanted to move forward. On Battle of the Exes one, she was on the outs, not due to her, but due to Russ's overplaying. She did win her one elimination here, but then she was booted second. So yeah, she has two early boots and one deep and one endgame run. Her elimination record is 1-3, so that's a 25% rate as she won one and lost three. Not much to say here. At 18th is Melinda Collins. He competed on Fresh Meat 1, The Gauntlet 3, Cutthroat, Battle of the Seasons 2, All Stars 2, and All Stars 3. So she's also someone who doesn't have much good going for her. She was booted almost immediately on Fresh Meat 1 due to the cast not locking the Austin cast. Gauntlet 3, she did make it about two-thirds through. That's mainly due to that entire newbies team having a huge alliance of people from her real world season, but when it was time to go in, she flopped. Yeah. Shutdown, she made it midway through the season, didn't really do anything notable on it. And then she was booted second again in Battle of the Seasons 2, kind of for the same reasons as Fresh Meat 1, but they're considered the older people. On All Stars 2, this is really her only good season where she did win an elimination. The other one from Teen was essentially given to her. She won a few dailies and she did make it to the final where she was second place. So I do give for that. But when you only have that good season out of six, I believe that's not really a good sign. And then she quit. Yeah, she quit All Stars 3 second because she was still injured from the All Stars 2 final. Her elimination record is 2-4, meaning she won 2, lost 4, and has a 33% rate. Success rate in eliminations. At 17th is Johanna Bata, who competed on Fresh Meat 1, The Gauntlet 3, The Island, and The Ruins. So she was booted third in Fresh Meat 1 due to the Austin thing. She did end up winning The Gauntlet 3, but that was mainly due to the rookie side having most people from her real world season, and she kind of just bulldozed her way there. But even with the way they won, it was seen as rigged because they gave up in the final essentially, and then there's that stupid rule that caused them to win the island. She got in good with the Kenny and Bananas crew, and they kind of carried her to the end game of the season, but she couldn't win when she needed to. And then the Ruin, she's booted like two-thirds through the season. So she doesn't have really early boots. Like she's not ever one of the first two boots, and she has some deep ones. But when you look at her individual accomplishments, there's really not a whole lot there. And especially when you're ranking against Era 2 women, she would be lower on the list, where if she was an Era 1 person with these same sets, she would be much higher. Her elimination record is horrible. It's at 0% since she won 0 and lost 4, at least based on how the challenge counts it. At 16th is Janelle Casanave, who competed on the Inferno 3, the Gauntlet 3, All Stars 2, and All Stars 4. So the thing with her is that she's very inconsistent. She either makes it to the end or goes pretty early. She wins the Inferno 3, and she's the runner-up on All Stars 2, so she has two finals to her name. But then there are seasons where she goes early, where I believe she's the third boot in Gauntlet 3, if I'm remembering it correctly, so that's not good there. And then she quit first on All Stars when she was already going to elimination, but to the whole Ayana mess, she quit. She has a 1-to-1 elimination record, so she has a 50% rate. She won one and lost one. There are some accomplishments, but when you look at her resume, there's really not a whole lot there. So she's kind of like Johanna in that way, but a bit more to it, though not much. Okay, so the next women here are definitely a bit more seasoned and a bit more accomplished with more deep runs, more seasons. Some of them have good elimination records, and there's a lot more to their catalog compared to the women below them. At 15th is Casey Cooper, who played on Fresh Meat 1, The Duel 1, The Gauntlet 3, The Ruined, and All Stars 2. What's interesting about her is that a lot of her stats are, they don't really capture the full picture. So let's get into her elimination record, which is 5-3, meaning she won 5 and lost 3 with a 63% rate. So I believe all of her elimination wins were on Fresh Meat 1, where she and Rush cheated the system where they intentionally packed fighters so they could win, and then every other season afterwards she lost all eliminations. But it's still there, so I have to think about it. She made it to third place on her first season, and it's the only finals appearance she made it on. The Duel one was a poor season. I believe she was booted third. So yeah. Um, the Gauntlet 3, she did make it deep into the end game, though that was mainly because she was on the Stacked Veterans team, but she was working with the winning side. And if it wasn't for Cora screwing them over, there's a good chance that she makes it to the final. So yeah, she kind of got screwed over there. Um, the Ruin, she was intentionally kept around until the final round before the final because the champions saw her as a weakling and she was a double agent working for them. All Stars 2, she won a daily and she was doing pretty well, but it was found out that she was pregnant, so they had to pull her. So pretty decent, though her stats on paper are more accomplished than when you get into the meat and grits of it. At 14th is Teresa Jones, who played on Fresh Meats 2, Cutthroat, Rivals 1, Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the Exes 2, and Double Agents. So Teresa is an interesting case because she's always been one of the more athletic women on the show, but she's prime proof that athletics isn't enough and you need a social and political game. So she did make it to the end game of Fresh Meats 2, where she was playing the middle, though that was mainly due to Ryan playing the middle more than her really doing much of anything. But she had a good first season there. Her second season was relatively under the radar. She was on the blue team, if I'm remembering correctly, and they're kind of the losing team for a while. But she made it to the second last round of the final. You could argue that she was screwed over there since Tina put her all with her, but intentionally threw it for Tori. She was booted very early on in Rivals 1. She was booted second due to a political move made by Paula. Rivals 2, she was booted around mid season, and you expect to see her political moves start to backfire and catch up with her here, where she voted for Leroy when she didn't mean for him to go home, and all that mess kind of just came back to bite her in the butt. Free agent, she had a pretty good season. She won an elimination, so yay for her. Which is where it's rare for her to win an elimination. She was making political moves, but she kind of like backtracked on it, or she played double agent. But she got booted right before the final, and this was an individual season that she had success on. Battle of the Exes 2, she played a good little game with Wesley, made it deep into the season, but the redemption twist screwed them over, with Bananas coming back, causing them to be booted. But thankfully, to Naya, she made her only final where, because she's the most recently eliminated one, they called her back. She partnered with Leroy and got second. But the fact that she had to make it to the final under the circumstance really isn't good. And then Double Agents was just sloppy all around, and she was booted midway. Her elimination record is really poor. She only won 2 and lost 7, meaning that she has a 22% win rate. So essentially, good athletically. She has her political moments, though she does too much. Um, she has several deep runs, but her poor elimination record and only making it to one final under very circumstances is why she's here. At 13th is Deanna Brown. Rest in peace to her. She played on Fresh Meat 1, The Duel 1, The Gauntlet 3, The Duel 2, The Ruins, Battle of the Exes 1, Rivals 2, and Battle of the Exes 2. So the interesting thing with DM is that she makes it deep most of the time. The only seasons that she didn't make it to the end game on were the Ruins and Battle of the Exes 2. Let's speak about the Ruins. So her being booted first was odd. There's been some speculation that she intentionally threw it, but we don't know. And then Battle of the Exes 2, she had to be pulled because she was unfortunately dying. So she was partnered with Derek in Fresh Meat 1. They made a lot of political moves once they had their winning streak, but it came back to bite them in the butt, causing them to be booted right before the final. The Duel 1, she was in the Majority Alliance, which took her far into the season, but she was the second last one booted before the final there. She did make it to the end in the Gauntlet 3. She was working with the people in Power Admirals on the veterans team, but they lost due to their ridiculous rule on that season. Dude, Duel 2 was really her first season in a while playing without CT. She was yet again in the Majority Alliance. She won a few dailies, and that's the thing with DM. She's good at dailies, but in the other category, she's not really good at. But she was booted right before the final here. Battle of the Exes 1, she and CT were paired together, and they worked really, 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 really well together. I also forgot to mention regarding the Duel 2, she won her only elimination. And then Rivals 2, she was booted right before the final there. So, like I mentioned, the thing with DM is that she's good at dailies, but eliminations she's poor at, as she only won one elimination and lost five, meaning she's a 17% win rate. And I think her elimination record is why she has so many end game runs, but so few final runs, as she's only made it to two finals. And clearly, her elimination record is the reason why. But generally, she's very good socially. She makes it deep most of the time. At 12th is Kellyanne Judd, who played on The Island, The Ruins, Bloodlines, Rivals 3, Battle of the Eras, All Stars 1, All Stars 3, World Championship, and All Stars 5. So, Kellyanne started her journey on the show on a very good run, where she made it right before the final on The Island, and she was the runner up on The Ruins, where it was just her and Sarah on the team. And despite being disliked and despite being on the losing team, she made it to the end. So that was very impressive. She took a break and had middling runs on the Bloodlines and Rivals 3, where she was booted mid-season on both of them. She came back on All Stars 1 and All Stars 3 and had two good runs as she made it to two finals there. If there was a female winner on All Stars 1, she most likely would have been the winner, so that's very impressive. She won a few eliminations there. She got fourth on All Stars 3, and these two seasons definitely boosted her up as her immediate seasons beforehand, like I mentioned, Bloodlines and Rivals were mediocre at best. World Championship was an okay season. She made it pretty deep, but not endgame deep. But her final two runs have been very, very bad and definitely brings her down as she was the first boot on Battle of the Eras and booted second on All Stars Rivals. She was known to be good at eliminations, but that even that has weakened recently, as she now has a 66 rate, meaning she has won six and lost six, meaning that she has a 50% win rate. So yeah, she's very inconsistent now, and she's kind of on a losing streak recently. And her daily performances are decent. She can win some, but others she completely flusters at. Okay, so this next set of women would be at the very top if they debuted in any other era, but because they're in era two, they're just in the second half and in the second quarter of this list. At 11th is Jillian Zoborowski, who competed on the Gauntlet 2, the Gauntlet 3, and Fresh Meats 2. So, for someone who only did three seasons, she has a great record. So, her first season, she was out right before the final, but like I mentioned beforehand, when it comes to the Gauntlet 2, it's kind of hard to see who did what in those seasons due to the weird format. But this is still an impressive rookie season for her. and she was one of the true hardcore rookies of that season. The Gauntlet 3 was another team season. Her back was against the wall, and I do critique her political game throughout her run overall, and that's one of the reasons why she's only at 10. But she had to win several eliminations to get to the end, and she was one of the few from that season and that team that you can really say really earned her win. And then she was on Fresh Meats too, so we saw how she did on Pair season, which was very interesting. She yet again was on the out. She had to go into a few eliminations there and really had to strategize and to work her way to get to her second final, where she got third. Her elimination record is great as she won five and only lost one with an 83% rate. So she only did a few seasons, but she did great in them. She would be higher if it wasn't for her or political game. At 10th is Tori Hall, who competed on the Gauntlet 3, the Duel 2, and Cutthroat. So her record is also very great for someone who only did 3 seasons. And she's above Jillian because one, she won more than once, and two, she really did grasp the political element of the game, and you saw that through all 3 of her seasons. She was also one of the hardcore rookies, but she slid right into the Austin Alliance and helped run that team, and it got her her first win. The duel, too, she played on an individual season. She was on the majority alliance throughout that season, and you can tell her plan was to stay out of elimination. But the one time that she did go into elimination, which was right at the end game of the season, she lost. And then in Cutthroat, she really was the linchpin of that red team, controlling all the politics and really holding them together. And she was doing double the work because she really wanted Brad to get the win. And she got 2 wins. So when you look at the 2 wins, they're seen as kind of weaker wins. Whereas the Gauntlet 3, the team initially gave up because they thought they lost, but they didn't realize Big Easy was DQ'd, so that ended with them winning. And then Cutthroat, there's mess with the other teams where the great team essentially got not food no dehydration. They suffered from that, so they were DQ'd, and they're only competing against Jen and Emily on the blue team. So she has a 2-1 elimination record, which is a 67% rate. But when you look at one of those wins, Tina threw it to her as a winning present. So that's the thing with Tori. She has done very well, but when you look at her individual stats and how much of it she did on her own, it's pretty lacking in comparison. At ninth is Jen Galva, who competed on the Inferno 3, The Island, The Duel 2, Fresh Meats 2, Cutthroat, and Rivals 1. So she's someone who's done well on most, if not all, of her seasons. So she shows a great consistency there. So on the Inferno 3, she kind of got the rookie treatment, but she made it to the end game of the season. Still, so there's that. She made it to the end of the island. She was playing a more under the radar game there, and it did her well. She stayed out of the drama and she got to her first final. The Duel 2's her worst season, though I think she won 2 eliminations. Yeah, she still won 2 eliminations on that season, and she just missed the end game there. So even her weakest season wasn't a bad season. And then with her final 3 season, she made it to 3 straight finals. You could tell she knew what she was going to do politically and what she needed to do to get to the end, which shows a consistency there. She was playing both sides very well on Fresh Meats 2, and it got her to that final. Hutch thought she was performing pretty well despite her being on the losing team, which is why she was never sent into elimination that season and made it to the end where it was just her and Emily competing for the team on that final. And then, due to her relationships, she also got in good on Rivals 1, where she made it to the end, and that's how she ended her run. The thing with Jen, which is why she's not higher, is her performances in finals. She's gotten last in all of the finals. In the island, there's only 2 teams, so if you're runner up, you're last. Fresh Meat 2, she was last. Cutthroat, she was last. And Rivals 1, she was last. So that's why she's not any higher. Her elimination record is 5-3, so she won 5, lost 3 with a 63% rate, a percentage rate. Okay, so at 8 is Aviv Bruno, who competed on Fresh Meat 1 Battle of the Eras and Vets and New Threats. So the interesting thing with her is that she won her first season, i.e. Fresh Meat 1. She was partnered with Durrell, who was in the Majority Alliance. They won one mission and one elimination at the end, and then she did the puzzle that got them the win. And then she disappears for 20 years essentially, and then she was an alternate who became a cast member on Battle of the Era. She barely knew anyone, but she ended up getting good with a lot of the people there. She was under the radar, and she got to the end where she was booted in the second to last round before the final against Jenny. And this was kind of shocking because everyone thought she'd be booted early. Then she's cast on the next season, and she does it again with a bunch of people that she wasn't even on last season. So one thing I'll say about Aviva, she has a very, very good social game. She can adapt to anyone who is around her, and we've seen this in more than one season. She was yet again in the Majority Alliance. She did decent in the dailies. She went into the elimination a few times. She won one, and then she lost again in the second to last round before the final. So she has a 20-year career gap. She only did 3 seasons, but she's done well in all of them. She has a 2-2 elimination record, meaning that she won two and lost two, so she has a 50% rate. At seventh is Emily Schramm, who competed on Cutthroat, Battle of the X's 1, Rivals 2, and Battle of the Eras. So her first 3 seasons are brilliant. I don't really feel like I have much to say about it, but let's just get to it anyways. So she was on the blue team on a rookie season in Cutthroat, and because she was a rookie, she had to go into elimination a few times, but she took it on the chin. But because she was such a strong performer and very well respected, she was one of the few people from the blue team who made it to the final. So it's just she and Jen competing against these much larger teams. Battle of the X's 1, she was paired with Kai, and they had to go into several eliminations yet again because they're still seen as a newer team. They weren't in the majority alliance, but they fought their way to get to the end and they got third place in the final. So this is her second consecutive final. And then in Rivals 2, pretty much it was obvious she and Paula were going to win. They won so many of the dailies that season, and no one wanted to throw them into elimination. So it's essentially a cakewalk for her to get there. Ultimately, she would be hired if it wasn't for a Battle of the Airs, where she was booted like a third way through the season because Laurel threw the challenge when she was delegated because she wanted Emily gone, and then she went home against Tina. But otherwise, she's good in daily. She has a very consistent track record outside of that one season, and then she has a 5-1 elimination record, meaning that she won 5 and lost 1. And it's crazy that someone with her track record is only at seventh with the Era 2 woman, where she probably would have been first in any other era. At six is Paula Miranek, who competed on the Duel 1, the Inferno 3, the Gauntlet 3, The Island, Duel 2, Fresh Meat 2, Cutthroat, Rivals 1, Battle of the X's 1, and Rivals 2. So she's done 10 seasons, if I'm remembering correctly, and she's made it to the end game in 7 of them, which is very, very, very impressive, and it shows consistency. So she was an early boot on the Duel 1 because she was a rookie and the one key was gone. She was seen as one of the stronger women on the Inferno 3. She was thrown into elimination against Anissa, and she found her way to get into the final. It was her first final. Then the Gauntlet 3, she was seen as one of the stronger women. Yet again, she avoided elimination that entire season and made it to a second consecutive final. Lost that because of the whole big easy situation. She made it to her third consecutive final on the island, where she essentially kissed up to Johnny Bananas and Kenny, and she was playing for them, but she didn't get on the boat because she thought she was going to be on the boat, but it gave her runner up instead of first place. Things kind of got off within her next few seasons, where the Duel 2, she was on the outs due to her sloppy political move and her attachment to Dunbar, which really did her in. She was booted like 2/3 throughout the season. She played very messy there, but it wasn't an early boot. Fresh Meat 2 was an early boot where she was booted third, though that's mainly due to her connection to Kenny more so than anything she really did. But she turned it around during her last few seasons, where on Cutthroat she was in the majority alliance, but she tried to avoid elimination all season, but it was her time to go in. She did not take it well at all, and she was booted right before the final. Rivals one, she was paired with Evelyn. They were the strongest team. They went into one elimination. Like the first one, they survived it. She made the political move to get rid of her biggest threat, which was Teresa and Camilla, and they won many of the daily. So pretty much they sprinted to Paula's first win. Battle of the Extras one was another good win. She was working with the majority alliance. She won daily. Were they in elimination? Yes, she won in elimination and she was booted in the second to last round before the final. And then her final season, Rivals 2, was a really good one. She stayed out of elimination the entire season and she won a majority of the eliminations with. No, sorry, the majority amount of the dailies with Emily. She wasn't in elimination at all. So she's pretty good in dailies too. The thing with Paula is her elimination record is not strong compared to the women above her, which is why she's only at six here, despite her good track record. She won five and lost five, so she has a 50% pitch rate. Alrighty, so now we're at the top of the top when it comes to the era to women. Heck, we might be at the top of the top when it comes to the women overall, but that will be another list, another video for another day. So at fifth is Sarah Rice, who competed on the Ruins, Fresh Meats 2, Cutthroat, Rivals 1, Battle of the Exes 1, Battle of the Seasons 2, Rivals 2, Battle of the Exes 2, and Rivals 3. So Sarah came into the show very promising as she was one of the only rookies who could hang with the longtime veterans. She was the only rookie who made it to the final and the only person from her team to make it to the finals with Kelly Ann. And they did have a chance of winning, and she went into a few eliminations that season. Her good rookie season definitely gave her an inflated sense of ego, which definitely followed her throughout her next few seasons. The biggest example of this is Fresh Meats 2, where she had a huge sophomore slump as she was very cocky, arrogant, and ended up going home second. Cutthroat was a good season for her, where she never went into elimination because she was seen as a strong player, and she did make it to her second final, so I will give her her props there. Rivals 1 was not really a good season for her. You could argue that she made it to the end game of the season as it was the second to last women's round, but there are only four female eliminations before the final, so it's whatever. But anyways, here her cockiness and the arrogance came back to bite her as she thought she was so much better than Janae and Jasmine, mainly Janae, but she was the one who got their elimination screwed up, causing her to be eliminated. So here's where she started to have some bad luck where she was DQ'd second on Battle of the Exes 1 because her partner Vinny harassed Mandy, to put it lightly. And yeah, it wasn't due to anything of her own doing. And something similar happened in Rivals 2, where because Trishelle left, they didn't want to give Sarah another partner, so they DQ'd her. On Battle of the Seasons 2, she was a vet at this point and was considered an older player, so she was playing with all of these new players and she had her back against the wall. She went into a few eliminations within the season, but after the first half of the season, her team ended up adapting pretty well and they weren't a target at all. And she made it to her third final where she got third there. Her final two seasons were definitely her stronger seasons where she played a lot more individualistic and selfishly on Battle of the Exes 2, where she finally decided to use West and Bananas against one another, and she threw in Leroy against Bananas so she could guarantee herself spots in the finals, and it did work. She got her first win with Jordan. But ultimately, with her final season, this paired her with Johnny Bananas, and they pretty much steamrolled the season. They never went into. Sorry, I don't think they went into an elimination. Yeah, they went to the final elimination of that season, but pretty much they kicked they dominated, they won a bunch of dailies in the season, and she ended her season, her run on the show in a win. But because of the money stealing twist, she didn't get any money. So she always was pretty good at dailies, good in the mental stuff, and she has a 6-2 elimination record, meaning that she won 6 and lost 2, causing her to have a 75% elimination rate. Ultimately, she's not number 4 or higher because I do feel like her earlier boots were mainly due to her own doing compared to the next person I'm going to talk about. At fourth is Evelyn Smith, who played on Fresh Meat 1, The Inferno 3, The Gauntlet 3, The Island, The Ruins, Fresh Meats 2, and Rivals 1. And I know I have changed like at all. Okay, so let's go through her seasons. She was eliminated first mainly due to Danny and Austin screwing it up, not because she did anything wrong. She won the Inferno 3, though she wasn't that memorable on the season. It was a huge team season, not much to really talk about there, but she won her first win. The Gauntlet 3, she was seen as one of the only women who could compete with the men, where she was often called a man, and she definitely believed that she was better than all the women and men which are stronger. But it got her runner up. It seemed like she was on the out from here on out from the island where she had her back against the wall, but she was strong enough to make it through those face-offs and was able to plot her way to the end where the guys wanted to work with her to get to the end, and it did end up working. So the ruins, she went in second against Kelly Ann, where she easily could have won that round, but she ended up quitting because she was just over it. Um, I do dock her for quitting, but it's somewhat more understandable. It wasn't like she did anything wrong to be in that position to begin with, but she was on the outs. Fresh Meat 2, she and Wes came in having all the power, and they definitely used it to their advantage at first, but then they're scared of going into exile, and they overplayed their hand, where it led her to be isolated and for her to be booted in the second to last round before the final. So she made it to the end game there, and then her final season, Rivals 1, was just very easy. She and Paula won the first elimination, and then they dominated the dailies, and they had an easy win. Her record getting eliminations is 6-3, so she won 6, lost 3 with a 67% rate. So she has a worse elimination record than Sarah, but I feel like Sarah's early boots were more so her fault compared to Evelyn. But the reason why I don't have Evelyn higher is she doesn't have the same longevity as some of the others, and she never competed in an individual season. So we have that data for the other three that we just don't have with her. At third is Camila Nakagawa, who competed on Cutthroat, Rivals 1, Battle of the Exes 1, Battle of the Seasons 2012, Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the Bloodlines, Rivals 3, Invasions, and 3030. So she was the rookie who was consistently thrown in on Cutthroat. I believe she lasted like 2/3 through that season. She was outplayed on Rivals 1 because Paula saw her and Theresa as one as second strongest duo, so she was out second there. Out of the Exes 1, she was partnered with Bananas, and they had control over the house, which gave Camilla her first win. So she definitely had that in her favor. And then they had to go into the last elimination there. Battle of the Seasons 2012, they were consistently thrown in because Fresh Meat were seen as the vets at that point. She was booted fourth, especially because Big Easy quit. Yeah. Um, Rivals 2 was a turnaround season for her, where she went into a few eliminations there with Demi as they were partnered, and she got to her second final. Free Agent was a forgettable season. I think she was booted mid-season there. Battle of the Bloodline, she was booted very early. I think she was like the second or third boot there, but that had nothing to do with her. It was because her sister lost the elimination, though they were targeting her sister to get to her. It's a very weird format that season. Rivals 3, she made it midway through the season, but due to her and Tony's constant fighting, they were DQ'd. And then she ended her run on 2 great seasons where she was the runner up on Invasion of the Champions, and she won Dirty 30, where she won several dailies and several eliminations and had her back against the wall, though she got herself in a bad position politically like 2/3 through the season due to her own antics. She won a lot of dailies, which I'm honestly shocked at the amount of dailies that she won, and these were mainly in the paired season, so that is impressive. And when it comes to her elimination record, she won 9 and lost 4. So she has a 69% rate. I think the thing with Camilla is that she's not as consistent as some of the other two above them, and they have a bit more longevity, and they have better elimination records. So by this point, we're kind of just splitting hairs. So that's why she is where she is, but she has an impressive record nonetheless. At second is Carmaria Sobello, who played on Fresh Meats 2, Cutthroat, Rivals 1, Battle of the Exes 1, Battle of the Season 2012, Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the Bloodlines, Invasions, 3030, Vendettas, Final Reckoning, World Wars 1, World Wars 2, All Stars 4, Battle of the Eras, and Threats and New Vet. Sorry, New Threats and Vets. So I'm not going to go over into her detail with Carmaria because she has way too many seasons, and I got time for that. So she makes it deep, and by deep I mean either the end. Yeah, she makes it to the end game very often. She has done it in most of her seasons. The only seasons where she hasn't is Fresh Meats 2, where she was booted immediately due to her being partnered with Doral. Battle of the Exes 1 and Battle of the Seasons 2 were also weaker seasons. She and Abram didn't perform well. They're booted midway there. Battle of the Seasons 2, they're booted early due to Fresh Meat being seen as the vets. But even on seasons where she did make it to the end, like Cutthroat, Rivals 1, and Rivals 2, she wasn't seen as one of the stronger women, but there was a consistency building there. From free agents onward, she was seen as a strong player. She went to several eliminations on free agents and was booted in the endgame of that season, partially due to her injured hand. Battle of the Bloodlines was her first winning season. She played pretty well politically there. She and her cousin won when they needed to, and she got her first victory. Invasions wasn't a good season for her at all. But from Dirty 30 to War of the Worlds, honestly, no. From Dirty 30 all the way to All Stars 4, she made it to the finals. So she made it to 6 finals in a row, which is very impressive. And for a lot of them, she didn't even have to go into elimination. So World of Worlds 1 and 2, she didn't go into elimination. I don't call her going. Okay, she did go into. No, she didn't even go into elimination on Dirty 30 either. And I think she escaped it in Vendettas too. So she was in a comfortable position a lot of the seasons where she didn't have to go into elimination. But she still showed on seasons like All Stars Rivals and sorry, All Stars 4, wrong season, and Battle of the Eras that if she needs to go into elimination, she can pull it out. She was booted right before the final on Battle of the Eras. And obviously, New Sets and Reds was a good season because she had to leave early due to her mother passing away. She won a lot of dailies, don't care to go through all of them, and she still has a great elimination record, as she has a 15 to 6 elimination record, meaning she won 15 and lost 6, meaning that she has a 71% elimination rate. So at 1 is Laurel Stuckey, who competed on Fresh Meats 2, Cutthroat, Powers 1, Free Agents, Invasions, or Other Worlds 2, Rider Dice, Battle of the Eras, and All Stars 4. So she was on a great streak with her first 4 or 5 seasons where she made it to 4 finals in a row, and those were her first 4 seasons. Fresh Meat 2, she won a lot of dailies and a few eliminations with Kenny. She was really the MVP there. Cutthroat, she was still one of the strongest women on the season there. Rivals 1, she had to really help Carmaria through those eliminations, and she was really the anchor of that team. She got runner up in all 3 of those seasons, so not last place, so that is impressive. And then she went away for a while, and she came back in free agent. She was thrown into several eliminations, and she won a fair amount of dailies as well. But pretty much no one was beating her that season, so she ended up winning. Invasions was a pretty good season for her, as she was booted right before the final, but there weren't that many rounds, especially for the champions, anyways. And then afterwards, her streak got worse. She was booted second in Other Worlds 2. She way overplayed her hand on that season, and it bit her in the ass spectacularly. Ride or Die, she was booted like a third way through the season. Not notable season for her at all. And Battle of the Era, she got booted two-thirds through the season. She could still win dailies, but her endurance was clearly gone. But she did win All Stars 4 when she won several dailies throughout the season, and I don't believe she went into elimination there either. And this, yeah, she has two individual wins. She still has made it to the end game in a majority of her seasons, and she has a good elimination record still, as she won 10 and lost 3, so she has a 77% hit rate. So when looking at the Era 2 woman, I added Aviv because she's the new Era 2 person who made it to at least 3 seasons. But outside of that, I don't think anyone's spot has changed. And I think that's partially due to the inactivity of the Era 2 women overall, outside of a few exceptions. But it's interesting looking at them because there's so many strong challenge players in this era regarding women that I don't think Era 3 and Era 4 has in comparison. Okay, so now we're in Era 3, and I remember being kind of shocked with how weak they were as collective. With the Era 1 woman, at least you could say, okay, the formats were trash, they were very dated, there wasn't that competitive edge until the latter eras of Era 1 due to the formatting issues. But with Era 3, there's no excuse. This is the era where they're doing mainly pair or individual seasons, or I think they would be more successful. But anyways, let's get to it. The bottom five are pretty much some of the worst of the worst. There's really nothing excusing them. They lack success overall. Anyways, at 20th is Simone Kelly, who played on Battle of the Exes 2, Rivals 3, and Dirty 30. So she did 3 seasons, so not many seasons, and she was out relatively early in all of them. I believe she was like the third boot in Battle of the Exes 2. She was the reason why they lost that elimination. Why was there so much happening due to all the DQs and the quits and the to be continued due to all the drama happening earlier on in the season? So she felt like she was there. It felt like she was there longer than she was, but she and Thomas quit in the third elimination, where they were most likely getting be sent home anyways. And then on 30-30, she was dead last because she got into a physical altercation with Shane. So yeah, she only went into one elimination, which she lost. There's just not much for me to hold on to here. At 19th is Latoya Jackson, who competed on Free Agents, Invasion of the Champion, and 30-30. Essentially the same thing with her. She was out relatively early on all 3 of the seasons that she was on, and she wasn't on many of the seasons anyway. She was only on 3. Free Agents, I think she was like the fourth out. She did win in elimination, so that's honestly like the only reason why she's higher than Simone, to be honest. Invasion of the Champion, she didn't make it to the Oasis and lost the third elimination. So there is that. And then she was out in the first part. Yeah, she was out in the purge first thing in 30-30 and then lost the redemption. So yeah, pretty much anything as Simone, and she has the elimination win. Yeah, at 18th is Jessica McCain, who competed on Rivals 2, Free Agent, Battle of the Access 2, and Rivals 3. I could easily get people's arguments with putting her last due to her track record. She has done 4 seasons and she only has one decent season. She was booted last on Rivals 2, though that was mainly due to her partner more than her. Free Agents was actually a pretty decent season for her, as she made it close to the end game and pretty deep on that season, but it wasn't good enough. And it's more than what Latoya and Simone have, so that's why she's higher. But her last 2 seasons were just utter crap. She was booted second on Battle of the Exes 2. It would have been She would have been booted first if it wasn't for the redemption twist. She and Destin won that over Thomas and his partner. So they were booted second instead of first due to that. And then Rivals 3, she and Johnny were thrown into the first elimination due to their poor performance and them getting last. They won that elimination, so she won elimination that bumped her up. And then they lost the second Daily, went into elimination and lost. Her elimination record is 1-4, meaning that she won one and lost four, so at a 20% rate. I forgot to mention Latoya, she won one elimination, lost two eliminations. She has a 33% rate. Essentially, free agent is why Jessica's higher than the other two. Otherwise, there's not much there at all. At 17th is Jasmine Reynard, who competed on Rivals 1, Battle of the Exes 1, Battle of the Seasons 2012, Battle of the Seasons 2, Rivals 2, Free Agents, All Stars 2, and All Stars 4. So the thing with Jasmine compared to the others is that she has made it to the end game a few times, i.e., Rivals 1 and All Stars 2. So I do give her credit for that, and it gives me something to latch on to. So that's why she's higher than the other three. And she's never been booted early in the elements that she's been one of the first two boots. That's not something that she's ever been. Battle of the X's one, I think she was booted like fourth or fifth. So like a third way through. Battle of the Seasons 2012, she made it close to the end game, but not quite. Yeah, her team was in power. They were working very closely with the San Diego team there. Um, Rivals 2, I think she and Teresa made it midway through the season, and obviously she didn't do well in elimination, but it was Teresa's machines that got them in that position to begin with. Free Agents, yet again, was booted like a third way through the season. And then All Stars 4, I think she's booted at mid season and All Stars 4. So this the thing with Jasmine. She usually makes it like a third way or halfway or a bit past halfway. So never too early, but very rarely an endgame run. She's never made it to a final. Her elimination record is worse than most of the others below her, as she won. I don't even want to say she won that one elimination. Janae won that one elimination for her, and she has lost 7 eliminations, making her record or her percentage being 13% elimination success rate. Eh, those few deep runs is why she's higher, but otherwise there's not much there. So at 16th is Brittany Thornton, who competed on Dirty 30, Vendettas, and Final Reckoning. She is also someone that has never made it to the end game of the season. She made it like two-thirds through Dirty 30. She won a few eliminations there. It was a pretty solid season for her there as a rookie. Vendetta, she was booted around like two-thirds through the season. Tony and Zach kind of backstabbed her, not end game, but past the halfway point. And then she was booted first on Final Reckoning. Yeah, she has a 2-2 elimination rate, so she won two and lost two, and that's a 50% elimination rate. So yeah, she has one poor season, two mess seasons, and never been an end gamer, much less a finalist. So that's why she is where she is. With the next set of women, there's something there to like grab onto, like something. Um, they're not complete flops. They have a few deep runs. A few of them might have a good elimination record. What some of them might have 1 or 2 finals appearances, and yeah, so they have some accomplishments compared to a lot of the women below them, but there's still not a whole lot there. So at 15th is Nicole Ramos, who competed on Battle of the Bloodlines, Rivals 3, Dirty 30, and Vendettas. So she was like a mid-season boot on Battle of the Bloodlines, nothing really notable there. The one season that has her high up is Rivals 3, where she and her partner pretty much decided to kiss up to Bananas and his alliance, even to the chagrin of her own cousin Nani, and it worked for them because they got to the location change and were booted right before the final. She won her only elimination in the season, so there is that. 3030 was yet another notable season for her. She wasn't really in the majority alliance, but she wasn't one of the big targets that got her midway through the season, but she was also someone that was very, very expendable, hence her mid-season boot, and then her final season, Vendettas, had her perked before even getting to the house. She has a 1-2 elimination record, meaning she won one and lost two, so she has a 33% rate when it comes to success. At 14th is Amanda Garcia, who competed on Rivals 3, Invasion of the Champions, 3030, Final Reckoning, War of the Worlds 1, Spice Lights and Allies, Battle of the Eras, and USA 2. Some might feel like she should be higher, but honestly, I'm kind of being generous here. She has a few deep runs, emphasis on a few, and that is Invasion of the Champions and Spies, Lies, and Allies. And she did show some moves there, so we'll give her props to that. Rivals 3, she was an alternate who was added on, and she just classified with everyone, and she was sent home pretty quickly, though they did win an elimination before her quick boot there. Invasion of the Champions was when the Lavender Ladies were formed and they controlled part of that season. She was booted immediately on Dirty 30 due to being crouched out and losing their redemption. Final Reckoning was the season that she should have won, or she should have made it to the end. She had the numbers. She and Tech were competing very well together. They won so many dailies this season, but they couldn't get along and they self imploded around like 2/3 through the season when they were safe. So there was that. War Other Worlds 1, she didn't have her alliances. She made it like a third way through the season, or a bit less than halfway through the season. So there's that. Spice License Allies, she joined the veterans in sticking together so they can push out all the newbies and so they can buy themselves time to get to the end game. That worked for her. She was booed right before the end game. And then her final two seasons were just bad. She was booed first on Battle of the Eras, and then she was booed like third or fourth on USA 2. Actually, no, I think she might have been the second female to be booted on that season. Yeah, I think she was the second female to be booted on that. Hold on, let me look it up quickly. Okay, she was the third woman booted on that season. So either way, not good. Final two seasons weren't good at all. She has a 2 to 7 elimination rate, so she won 2 and lost 7. Her percentage rate in success in eliminations is 29%. So very few deep runs and a poor elimination record, and she gets herself into trouble when she's not with her solidified alliance. Pretty much says it all. At 13th is Avery Tressler, who competed on Battle of the Exes 2, Rivals 3, Battle of the Eras, and All Stars 4. So she hasn't competed in many seasons. Battle of the Exes, she was booted like 2/3 through the season. She had her Portland people. She won a few eliminations on that season, so I'll give her that, but they're most likely in those positions because they lost the dailies. And then, yeah, they're booted like 2/3 through that season. Rivals 3, she was DQ'd immediately because Leroy, her partner, had an injured back. Not her fault, obviously. Battle of the Era, she made it about halfway through the season. Not much to really talk about there. She won an elimination there, though she had a lot of assistance help before booted a bit before the halfway mark. And then All Stars Rivals, she didn't really have any main alliances, but she was seen as one of the stronger women on the season, which is why she got purged right before the final. So she has one deep run. Her early boot wasn't her fault, and she has two mid-season boots. Essentially, the one positive she has outside of that is her elimination record, where she won 3 and lost 2. So she has a 60% success rate in eliminations. At 12th is Marie Rhoda, who competed on Battle of the Seasons 2, Invasion of the Champions, Dirty 30, Vendettas, and Final Reckoning. So she only played on 5 seasons and she does have 2 deep runs. So that boosted her up a bit. And she has a finals appearance. And I think she's the first one out of everyone in this area that I've talked about so far that does have a finals appearance. So that automatically bumped her higher than a bunch of the others below her. At the same time, sorry, so she made it to the end game in Battle of the Seasons 2012. She was the one personality who was trying to play politically, but her teammates were kind of lunatics. So she had to maneuver that way. She definitely helped them make it far for a bit, but then things just fell apart at the end. She was booted first innovation of the championship. Really bad showing there. Um, 3030 and Vendettas had her kind of in the group, but on the outskirts as well. Not yeah, wasn't an early target, but was seen as expendable, hence her being booted mid-season on both 3030 and Vendettas. And then Final Reckoning, she was a subsidiary of the Lavender Ladies. At the same time, Farmery had ties to the other side of the house, so they're good for a bit. But then she was very expendable. Redemption House helped her get back into the house after being booted late, and then made it to her first and only final there. Her elimination record is poor. She won two and lost five, meaning she has a 29% success rate. Yeah, not much to say there. She had a few deep runs. She can be political, so I give her that over many of the women below her. So she has something. And the final person in this grouping at 11th is Jamie Carroll, who competed on Battle of the Seasons 2, Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the Exes 2, 3030, Vendettas, Final Reckoning, All Stars 1, and All Stars 3. So she's the first person on this list who's been to two finals, so that definitely bumped her up here, but it's sad that she with her record only midway where she'd be lower on a lot of other lists. But anyways, Battle of the Seasons 2012, she was booted roughly around halfway through the season. She was in the majority alliance, but was booted so much earlier than all of them because her team just sucked in the dailies. It's always getting last. I was two was a good showing for her. She won a few eliminations. She and Camilla worked well together, and they made it to the final. So there is that. And that's her first final. Free Agent was a horrible season. She was thrown into elimination due to the skeleton twist or whatever, or that card twist, and then she lost the first elimination. While of the X2, she was booted fourth because she and Knight just were not good at the competitions. She took a break for a while. She came back in Dirty 30. She made some dirty moves. She was a bit political here and there, but she wasn't in the main alliance. She was booted around three quarters through the season. Vendetta, she was intentionally playing an under the radar game. She was in good with a lot of the people. She wasn't a target on the season. She was booted right before the final, but that was because she lost the purge. Wasn't because anyone was targeting her. And then she was booted right away on Final Reckoning. All Stars won. She made it to the final there, and she was younger than all of the people, and she didn't know many of them. At the same time, most like over half the cast made it to the final on All Stars. She got seven, so she didn't do that poorly, but at the same time, she was younger. And then also, Steve, she left early because her father passed away, which is definitely understandable. Her elimination record is 2-4, meaning she won two and lost four. I believe both of the eliminations she won was on Rivals 2. And you could attribute that more to Camilla more than anything else. And then she lost all the other ones. So she has several deep runs, so I do give her credit for that. But she does have a few early boots that bumps her down and a few at best mediocre seasons. Okay, so these next set of women are the ones who I think I have overall positive challenge careers, or they're a bit above mediocre, leading positive in comparison, but there's still definitely some holes in their games or their careers. At 10th is Ashley Kelsey, who competed on Battle of the Seasons 2, Invasion of the Champions, and All Stars 5, and she is the new addition onto this tier list since the last video I made, since she competed on All Stars Rivals. So on Battle of the Seasons 2012, her team was in control of the politics that was happening in the season, though she was arguably the most passive one. Actually, no, she might not have been the most passive one when it comes to that. She held her own. She won an elimination at the end game to get to the final, and they did end up winning. Invasion of the Champions just showed how out of depth she was compared to all of the other veterans, especially the women, and she was booted right away. All Stars Rivals is an interesting season. Obviously, she was with people that she knew from her San Diego season, and she was partnered with her ex Dario, and they did okay. They got a start earlier on, and they weren't poor performers. They also won an elimination, and they were booted right before the end game. So overall, I think she's kind of median, or she's mediocre overall. But she is, I think, out of all the challengers, she's probably like the most baseline player. She has two elimination wins and two elimination losses, so she's a 50% rate. Anyways, at ninth, I do have Sylvia Ellsworth, who competed on Invasion of the Champions, Vendettas, Final Reckoning, All Stars 3, and All Stars 5. So she was booted like midway through Invasion of the Champions, though she had to win a few eliminations to get as far as she did in the season because she was consistently underestimated. Vendettas wasn't a good season for her. She did win another elimination against Melissa, but she was pulled right away. After that, early on in the season, because she was sick, Final Reckoning was definitely a very strong season for her. She and Joss were the only pair in the house who were there from the very beginning and made it to the very end without being eliminated, without going to redemption, without debuting late. And they were definitely a center pin in the main alliances that were happening in the season. She also won, yeah, they won two eliminations that season as well. So they got thrown in the sand when they needed to, and they got runner up on that season. All Stars 3 was a season where she was in the majority alliance yet again, so she always finds herself in decent enough positions politically, especially, yeah, she usually does, especially post like her first season or so. Um, but she went into elimination about two-thirds through the season and lost, and then All Stars Rivals was just a bad showing overall. Her elimination record is still at a positive, where she won five and lost three with a 63% rate, but it's definitely lowering, and that elimination record's getting weaker and weaker. At eighth is Naya Moore, who competed on Free Agents, Battle of the X's2, All Stars 3, World Championship, Battle of the Eras, and New Threats and Vets. So Free Agents was just poor season for her. She was the third out, if I recall, and she was obviously a rookie. So she was gonna have to prove herself anyways. Battle of the Exes 2 was definitely a good season for her. She won many different eliminations. She had her alliances, though she got very emotional at times where it became a detriment to her game, and she obviously took herself out in the end game where she did what she did to Jordan, where she had a very strong case of making it to the final. Without that, she's not on the show for a while. She comes back and All Stars 3. She won her elimination against Sylvia that season. The daily she performed horribly on, and that's something that will unfortunately fall her for the rest of her challenge career. But she made it to her first and only final here. World Championship was a poor showing for her. She was the second out. Battle of the Era, she made it a bit past the halfway mark. She won elimination there, and then she was DQ'd second on New Threats and Vets due to the injury that she received during the opening challenge. So overall, pretty mediocre career. A bit more positive, though she had a fair share of early boots and a fair share of deep runs. Her elimination record, one of the main positives she has, with a 5-3 elimination record, and she has a 63% elimination rate there. So these next two people are interesting because they are multi-champions, but they have such huge flaws in their games. So at seventh is Janae Mannion, who competed on Rivals 1, Battle of the Seasons 2, Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the X's 2, All-Stars 1, All-Stars 2, All-Stars 3, World Championship, USA 2, of the Eras, All-Stars 5, New Threats, and Vets. So many seasons there. Her first run on the show involved her usually making it to the end but not getting to the final, which we saw in Rivals 1, where she single-handedly won the elimination against Sarah and Caitlyn there, got booed right before the final, and they were rookies on that season. The same thing with Battle of the Seasons 2012, where the Cancun team were working very in tandem with the San Diego team. She avoided elimination until the location change because she knew she wasn't that good, and then she got booted right then. And then she made it to the end game in Rivals 2, though she and Annie were on the outs of that big alliance with the women and some of the other men there. Free Agents and Battle of the Exes 2 were also seasons where she made it pretty deep in, but not end game. I believe she was booted around two-thirds through both of those seasons. Obviously, things turned around for her for the positive in All Stars 1, All Stars 2, and All Stars 3, where she started performing well in the dailies, and she made it to three back-to-back finals, which is huge because she never made it to the finals before. She tied for the best woman in the final with Kellyanne on All Stars 1, though it seemed like Kellyanne probably would have won the tiebreaker if there was one. And then she won All Stars 2 with MJ, though that win was controversial. And then she won the solo season of All Stars 3. These seasons really bumped her up. Unfortunately, her other seasons haven't been strong. World Championship, she was booted like a third way through because her partner got injured. Though she had a strong start there, was booted very early on in USA 2, was booted like a third way through in Battle of the Eras, an early boot there. She was booted immediately on All Stars Rivals, and then she lasted like a quarter of the season in Vets and New Threats, though she came in a quarter way through the season. I do think Janae gets sloppy politically at times, and she gets very paranoid with red people the wrong way. She has gotten a lot better in the dailies throughout her career, so I give her props there. But her elimination record is weak. She only won 4 and she has lost 9, meaning that her elimination percentage rate is at 31%. So at 6 is Ashley Mitchell, who competed on Rivals 3 Invasion of the Champions, Dirty 30, Final Reckoning, War of the Worlds 1, War of the Worlds 2, Total Madness, Double Agents, Specialized and Allies, All Stars 5, and Vet Edu Set. So the thing with Ashley, is that she is good at finals from what we've seen, hence her winning 2 out of the 3 finals that she's been in. But it's very rare for her to have a deep one. Rivals 3, she was booted like 2/3 through the season, though that mainly had to do with Corey's sloppy gameplay. She did win Invasion of the Champion, so that is impressive, and she did form a majority alliance there. She quit immediately under the 30, so there's not much to talk about there. And she did win Final Reckoning, though she came in like 40% through the season. So that really was annoying. She didn't really do well in the dailies there, but her odds were still solid. So she was protected through that entire run. Things get spotty after this, where she was booted immediately on War of the Worlds 1. She did make it to the final on War of the Worlds 2, where she didn't have her allies from previous seasons there, so she really had to integrate herself with a different group of people there. She was booted very early on in Total Madness and Double Agents, so not good there. She was making it deep in Spice Lice and Allies, but then her fight with Josh got her kicked out when she probably would have made the final there. She was booted early on All Stars Rivals, and she made it pretty deep on Vets and New Threats, but not endgame deep. So Dailies isn't Ashley's strongest suit, to be honest. And then she has a poor elimination record, where she has only won 4 eliminations and has lost 7. So her rate percentage in that regard is 36%. There's just so many seasons where she is in early boots that it's hard to ignore. In addition to her poor elimination record and her lack of end game runs, though that's kind of countered by her wins, but yeah, it's why I couldn't have her too high. So at 5th is Kayla Casillas Bird, and honestly, I could easily move her down in the future. I just don't feel like doing it right now. Anyway, she competed on Invasion of the Champions 30-30, Vendettas, Final Reckoning, Total Madness, Ride or Dice, and All Stars 3. So she barely made it to the Oasis on Invasion, so she was able to kind of early on there, a bit before the halfway point. 30-30, she did get in good with the more powerful women on the season. She held her own. She won a few eliminations on that season, and she made it to the end game, but lost out in the Preds right before the final, especially with Redemption kind of biting her in the butt when it came to Camilla and Cara Maria. On Vendetta, she played pretty well. Actually, she had her moments. Sorry, she was close with a lot of the guys, though her alliance with Cam and Marie really kind of fell apart, especially after the midpoints through the season. But she made it to the final and she got 4th out of 8, so that was good. It really seemed like she was going to become one of the best players and really just take over, but that never happened. She got booted right away on Final Reckoning due to fighting Melissa. She was off for a bit, then came back on Total Madness, got booted halfway. She really wasn't focused on the game like that due to a lot of relationship drama. She did Ride or Dies, which is her last season, and then she was booted right away. And then All Stars 3, she definitely held her own. She was a part of the Majority Alliance. She won some dailies and she won an elimination on that season. And she made it to the final where she was the runner up woman there. But you could also think that, or you could make the points that her being so much younger definitely benefited her. She has a 5-3 elimination record, so that's a positive for her compared to some of the women right below her. 63 percentage rate. She won five, lost three. But honestly, I could see myself moving her down a bit more into the future. Not bad, but just not great. She overall has a positive career, but yeah. At fourth is Jenna Campono, who competed on a Battle of the X's 2, Battle of the Bloodlines, Rivals 3, Invasion of the Champions, 30-30, Final Reckoning, What Other Worlds 1, and Total Madness. So she, like Kayla, had many deep runs, but they've never won. I think with Jenna, she's been to more finals and she had more endgame seasons. Her first three seasons had her going to finals where she made it to the final on Battle of the Exes 2 as a layup team, but just qualified because they refused to drink the potion. She won several eliminations in the Battle of the Bloodlines and ended up getting third there with her cousin. Rivals 3, she was partnered with Johnny's cousin, hence partnered with Johnny and Sarah. They won a few dailies there. They put decently on Rivals 3. I don't recall her ever going into elimination that season, and that would be the last of her finals appearances. Even her next two seasons, Invasion of the Champions and 30-30, were strong showings for her. Though she was booted right before the end, I believe both of them were purchased too. So it showed that her mental aptitude wasn't the strongest. And it's something that she definitely needed to work on. She did win a few eliminations on Invasion specifically, so I do have to point that out. Her final three seasons, there's really not much to talk about. She was booted right away on Final Reckoning. War of the Worlds 2, she was booted midway through the season. And then Total Madness was also another mid-season boot that she won against Tori. She really wasn't that focused on the game when she was kind of checked out there. And that's where her journey ends. She does have a positive elimination record with winning 6 and losing 3, causing for a 67% elimination rate, but you can clearly tell that her peak was in her first few seasons, and she's gradually gotten worse since. And the lack of mental strength is a huge, huge pitfall that I don't see her overcoming if she ever even comes back. So at third place is Danny Gonzalez, who competed on Battle of the Seasons 2, Rivals 2, Free Agents, Battle of the Exes 2, Battle of the Bloodlines, Rivals 3, War of the Worlds 1, War of the Worlds 2, Total Madness, Double Agents, Spies, Lies, and Allies, Ride or Dies, All Stars 5, and Bits and New Threats. Okay, I doubt that I'm going to go through all of these seasons because she's done so many of them, more than most of a woman ever. The only season that she actually went home early on was Battle of the Bloodlines, and that was a season where she was booted halfway. So technically, she's never been booted early, and that's a huge positive for her. It shows massive consistency that most people just don't have. Her first season, Battle of the Seasons 2, had her in the majority for a bit, but then things fell apart. She was booted right before the end game. She was booted in the end game in Rivals 2, but she and Johnny really weren't in the majority alliance like that. Free Agents is definitely one of her better seasons. It was the closest that she got to winning. Actually, that might have been right, guys. But yeah, she got very close to winning Free Agents, and that was an individual season, so that was impressive. I don't think she went into elimination that season. Viola XS2 had her eliminated mid-season, but luckily the Redemption House, or sorry, the Exile twist was a thing that season, so she and Johnny had to beat several people to come back into the house, and then they were booted right before the final yet again. I already talked about Battle of the Bloodlines. Rivals 3 had her and Wes definitely more checked out. And you can tell they're just burnt out by doing so many seasons, not being in the majority alliance, but they still made it to the end game there, was booted before the final. She took a break for a few years. She came back on one. She had a kind of deep run. Like, I'd say she was moved like two-thirds through the season, but ultimately it was due to the format going individual and her being eliminated in the dumbest elimination ever. Made it to the she was booted right before the final on War of the Worlds 2. She was kind of on the wrong side of the house there. She was booted right before the end game on Total Madness, and then afterwards she would go on a three final streak where she made it to the finals on Double Agents, Spice Slice and Allies, and Red or Dies. She started working with the Big Brother people at around this time, and this is where she got close to Casey, and then the Vacation Lines was a thing in Spice Slice and Allies and Ride or Dice. Where honestly, I think Ride or Dice might have been the closest she got to winning, if not for Free Agents. She went away for a year, then she came back on All Stars Rivals and Best Enemy Threats, where she was put right before the final on both seasons. So she has mad consistency, though others have won. But despite the amount of seasons she's been on, she's only made it to four finals. Her elimination record is at 9 to 12, so she's won 9 and lost 12. So that's a negative elimination record with a 43% of success in eliminations. And I think that elimination record is why she has so many endgame seasons or seasons where she's winning right at the end game, but few final appearances in accordance to the amount of seasons that she has done. At second, and I still can't believe this person at second is Nicole Zatanna, who competed on Invasion of the Champions, Vendettas, All Stars 4, and All Stars 5. The thing with her is that she's literally never been eliminated. She's been in 5 seasons. That is very impressive, and most people who even have higher heights than her do not have that accomplishment. And the thing with her is that 4 of her seasons were finals appearances. So it's not like she was booted in the end game or she was booted the season. She made it to the final in all but one of her seasons. Invasion of the Champions, she was seen as a strong player there. She kind of went under the radar when it came to all the political stuff that was happening with the two sides of the house that season. She got third on that season. Vendetta, she had a good relationship with a lot of the guys and girls. She didn't have to go into elimination on that season, and she made it to the finals, but she got bottom 4 on that season, though that was due to her injury as well. On All Stars 4, she got fifth and she made it to the final there, but she was obviously working with Laura and she was seen as one of the stronger women, but her mental aptitude just isn't there, which we see in prior finals. And then it's the same thing with All Stars Rivals, where she was partnered with they had good relationships with a lot of people in the house. They got their start at the right time, and she got fourth in All Stars 5. The one season where she didn't make it to the final on was Double Agents, and that was that's due to her being injured very early on in the season where she was booted. Essentially, I think she's the first woman to leave outside of Ashley returning. Her elimination record is 3-0, so she won 3 and lost 0, 100% rate. So yeah, her having a good elimination record, never being eliminated, is why she's here, but the lack of mental aptitude is a huge limitation. And at number 1 is Tori GL, who played on Dirty 30, Final Reckoning, War of the Worlds 2, Total Madness, Double Agents, Spice Dice and Allies, Ride or Dice, World Championship, USA 2, and Battle of the Eras. So she was obviously number 1 from Era 3, and she stands out against literally everyone else on this list. She was the rookie of the season on Dirty 30, as she was the only one to make it to the final and held her own against many of the super vets. Final Reckoning was a poor season. She was booted. Really, nothing more to say there. She proved to be a strong competitor on War of the Worlds 2. Despite her team targeting her, she flipped. She won many eliminations in the season, but she got purged midway through the final. Shawn Mendes and Double Agents were just poor showings for her. No way around it. But this will be the last time where she's eliminated, which is impressive. Where the last time you were eliminated on the show is 6 to 7 years ago, as I'm recording this. In all the other seasons since she made it to the finals, so she made it to the finals on Spice Lies and Allies. It could be argued that she was robbed on Spice Lies and Allies. Obviously, this was when the vacation lanes was a thing. She won Ride or Dies, and she was the front runner for that entire final. She played things pretty well there. World Championship, she was the runner up there. USA 2, she got fourth in that final. She was working with a bunch of people that she never even dealt with, as she wasn't even close to a lot of the veterans there. And then she was fourth on Battle of the Eras too. So she won many dailies in many different formats. So she's a strong competitor in that format. And she has a really good elimination record, as she won 8 eliminations and lost 3 with a 73% win rate. So that's huge. So that is my commentary on the Era 3 women. As you can see, I don't think they're nearly as strong as the Era 2 women, and they don't have the excuses that the Era 1 women have when it comes to the poor formatting. So yeah, that's it. And then I have one more, which is Era 4. And now we are in the final era, that is era 4. Obviously, this is when they started expanding outside of MTV to variety results. I do think overall the era 4 women are stronger than at least the era 3 women, but there's not enough data since there's only been like 11 seasons since the earliest women of this era debuted, and a lot of the longtime veterans are still on the show, so they didn't have time to really grow in the same way. Anyways, these first 5 that are out, generally, some of them have success. Some of them definitely have some deep runs, but usually there's something missing in their games, and the bottom few, there's just not a whole lot there. At 16th is Sofia Jimenez, who competed on Argentina World Championship and Battle for a New Champion. So there's not a whole lot to say about her. She only did 3 seasons. She was an early boot on all of them. The furthest she lasted was on Argentina, where she was still like the third or fourth boot. Um, World Championship, she was booted second. Yeah, I think she was booted second, if I remember, first or second. She was booted very, very early on World Championship, and she was the second woman eliminated on Battle for a New Champion. She has a 0 to 3 elimination record, meaning that she lost all 3 of the eliminations that she's been in, never made it deep, never even made it past the early phases of the season. But 14th is At 15th is Zara Zafani, who competed on UK World Championship and Battle for a New Champion. I don't. I think people would have her higher, and I had her here last time. Yes, she did make it to the end on Yuki, and she was the runner-up. When you look at the format of that season, there was only like 4 rounds. It was much shorter than all the other seasons, and I think like half of the cast made it to the final. So yes, I do give her credit. The format's still weaker than most challenge seasons. So yeah, and even outside of that World Championship, I think she was booted like fourth at like a third way through the season. So there is that. And the Battle for a New Champion, she did make it relatively deep. I'll give her props there. She just missed the end game. And it was there where she won a whole lot of dailies throughout this season. She was one of the best performing women there. So she does have a 0 to 2 elimination record, so she lost all 2 of the eliminations that she has been on. And yeah, there's just not much there. There's only so much that a runner up position on a very shortened season could do. She had an okay Battle for a New Champion, but not endgame worthy. At 14th is Tula Fessa Curly, who competed on War of the Worlds 2, Total Menace, Double Agents, Spice Lies and Allies, Battle for a New Champion, and All Stars Rivals. So she is someone that they're clearly putting a lot of effort into, especially during her medal run on the show. She was booted immediately on War of the Worlds 2. She was the first woman who was properly eliminated there. Total Madness, did she make it halfway through the season? Um, Halfway or a bit before halfway through the season, she was taken out there due to a foot injury. Double Agents is arguably her best season. She won an elimination, she won a few dailies on that season, and she was booted right before the final. This kind of continued on Spice Lines and Allies. She was with the Veteran Alliance, though she was kind of at the bottom of it because a lot of them didn't trust her, and she was closer to the rookies as well. Not as standout on Spice Lines and Allies, if I'm remembering correctly. For a new champion, she was seen as a veteran, kind of, but the social game just wasn't there. The political game wasn't there. She was thrown in over and over again, and she was booted a bit before the halfway mark on that season. And then All Stars 5 was just a forgettable season all around. She was booted like a bit before the halfway point of the season there. So she won a few dailies, not much. Her elimination record is poor. She won three but lost six, so she has a 33% success rate, and that definitely explains why she has never made it to a final and rarely has deep runs. At 13th is Kaylee Morris, who competed on Vendetta's, Final Reckoning, and War of the Worlds 2. So she's only done three seasons and she's never made it to a final. But she's had very deep runs on Final Reckoning and War of the Worlds too. She quit Vendettas when she most likely would have made it deep into that season as well. So she's never someone who's eliminated early, but she's never made it to a final as well. Her elimination record is 3-1, which is 75%. But when you look at all of her elimination wins, they're with Cam. So you could attribute this a lot more to Cam, but you could also attribute this to her being a good listener as she listened to Cam. And all of her eliminations were in Final Reckoning. So she's rarely in eliminations, so that's good. It's not a negative elimination record. I just think the thing with her is that it's hard to attribute things that she solely did. She was decent politically, especially on her last season. I will give her that props. But when it comes to individual accomplishments, not a whole lot is there. And the record in itself is a bit misleading once you get into the deeper details. At 11th is okay, so the next set of women I think all have decent to solid challenge careers, even though many of them didn't get the chance to do a whole lot of seasons, or at least at this point as I'm recording this. At 12th is Natalie Negrati, who competed on Vendettas, Final Reckoning, and War of the Worlds 1. So, yet again, she's only done three seasons. She's made it deep on two of them, where she was booted a bit before the final on Vendetta. She was the best performing woman on the season, especially when it came to the dailies. Final Reckoning, yes, she made it to the final on, but let's be real. She was in the Redemption House for most of the season. She and Polly did win a few dailies once they came back into the house and got third because she ran the wrong way. And then War of the Worlds one just wasn't a good season and she was booed early. When it comes to her elimination record, she has won two and lost five. So her percentage success rate in elimination is 29%. And she chokes in eliminations, and that's a really, really bad trait to have. At 11 is Nurse Mateo, who competed on Ride or Die's Battle for a New Champion and Battle of the Eras. I'm sure people think that she should be higher, but when you look at her career thus far, it has been very baseline. So she has one okay season that is Ride or Die. She helped Nelson break his streak with not winning dailies, and she helped him win a few there. She was booted mid-season. She was the runner-up on Battle for a New Champion. She was in the majority alliance for a majority of the season, but then they started targeting her at the tail end. Then she needed to win eliminations to get there, and then she is out immediately on a Battle of the Eras. So dailies isn't her strongest suit, just from what I see here, and most of them are from Ride or Dice. She has a 3-2 elimination record, so she won three and lost two. So she has a 60% success rate, but when you look at her elimination wins, they're all in the Excel format. So she needs to diversify the type of eliminations that she wins. At 10th is Devon Rogers, who competed on Final Reckoning, War of the Worlds 1, and All Stars Rivals. So, Final Reckoning, um, she's the beneficiary of the redemption twist, obviously, where she and Jose were booted immediately, Polly and Natalie were booted right after them, and they kept on saving one another with the double cross. She got into the house twice, and then was booted two more times, but she was booted around the two-thirds portion of the season, so a meh season, really. War of the Worlds 1, she showed that she could keep up with the Uber vets and the Uber competitors on the season as she won a few eliminations. She won a few dailies on War of the Worlds 1 as well. I forgot about that. And she was booted at the Purge right before the final. And then All Stars Rivals, she was partnered with Shane. They kind of played the middle for a bit. They weren't involved in a lot of the messiness. They were kind of under the radar, but they're both working with different sides of the house and they brought their information together. They won when they needed to, which wasn't often. They got to the final and they're very, 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 very close to winning the season. Elimination wise, she won five and lost two, so she has a 71% elimination rate. So she has a short but decent she has a short but decent challenge career, but compared to the other era for women, she is lacking. At ninth is Melissa Reeves, who competed on Vendettas, Final Reckoning, Total Madness, Battle for a New Champion, and All Stars Rivals. Honestly, I could be argued into rank her down, but I'm going to keep her here for now, especially because she's the first one on this list who's been to two finals, and I do think that says something, especially with the era for women who don't get the chance to be on many seasons or they have it so far. So her making it to two finals definitely deserves a decent placement on the list. Vendettas was a poor season for her. No way around it. Yeah, she was like the third woman. No, yeah, she was the third woman booted there. She was booted right away on Final Reckoning due to her fighting Kayla. And then obviously she came back on Total Madness. She was a lot calmer in comparison. You could tell she really wanted to make it far. She was taking the game seriously, though she still had her Melissa moments, of course. Battle for a New Champion was a rough season. She was targeted the entire time, and she made it halfway through the season there. And then she made it to the end on All Stars Rival. She and Nicole kind of just chilling, didn't do a whole lot, won the elimination when they needed to, and then got fourth on All Stars 5. Elimination wise, she won three and lost two, so she has a 60% success rate. So when you look at Melissa, she has two really poor seasons, one meh at best season, and two good seasons. So I do think that these next set of women are mostly good. We're starting to see some winners, and we're starting to see some women who, as I'm recording this, have a lot of momentum on their side and are relatively well-rounded compared to some of the others below them. At eight is Amber Zatra, who competed on Double Agents, Spy Spies and Allies, Ride or Dies, World Championship, and All Stars Rivals. So her first season had her winning. She was working with the Big Brother Alliance for a majority of the season, but she still got a bit of that much treatment at the tail end. She had to win a few eliminations to get there, and then she won. Spice Life and Allies, she arrived a bit late. She wasn't really a part of the Veterans Alliance. She was blindsided when Vessel and them targeted her. She had to win an elimination, and she was booted right before the halfway point of the season, so not a very good season for her. Ride or Dies, it seemed like she was kind of accepted into the fold. But when it comes to the daily, she performed very poorly with her partner at the time. But because of that, it caused them to be seen as a goat, kind of, and they were taken to the end game and rebooted in the second to last round before the final. World Championship, she made it midway before she was pulled because she was pregnant. It would have been interesting to see how much longer she would have lasted without that. And then All Stars Rivals was a season where she was booted right past the midway point, and here showed that she actually did win a few dailies, which was a weakness in her game overall. So when it comes to eliminations, she has won five and lost three, so her percentage rate is 63%. I think the thing with Amber is that she probably peaked too early with her winning season. She has struggled to make it far again. She usually gets booted on the halfway point in most of her other seasons, Ride or Dice being the notable exception. And there are definitely some other weaknesses in her game when it comes to like puzzles and math and stuff like that. Despite her being a winner, she has more holes, especially socially, compared to the women above her, and heck, even some of the women immediately below her. At seventh is Michelle Fitzgerald, who competed on Spies, Lies, and Allies, Ride or Dies, USA 2, Battle for a New Champion, and Battle of the Eras. The interesting thing with Michelle is that through each of her seasons so far, as I'm recording this, she has done better and better and better and better and better. So you really see the ascending um incline and the ascending momentum that she's gained with each and every season. On Spice Lies and Allies, she was an early boot. She was booted fourth on that season, and she was definitely given the rookie treatment there. On Ride or Die, she and Jay won a few dailies, and they had some allies, but obviously they misplayed it, and Michelle's still a people pleaser. It all came back to bite them in the butt where they are booted a bit before the halfway mark on that season. USA too, she was in a perfect spot where she was able to get along with the newer USA people, but was also kind of good with the vets as well. She won an elimination right away. But she was kind of playing both sides, and people were catching on to her, which bit her in the butt, and then she was sent home right before the final in the second to last round on USA 2. Then she does another season like a few weeks later, which is Battle for a New Champion. And she essentially had all the relationships at her beck and call. She really controlled the political game the entire season. She didn't have to go into elimination until Cara Maria called her into elimination. She won. Everything was going her way on that season, but she was purged last minute in the final purge of the season where she would have made it to the final otherwise. And then, just when we thought that everyone was going to target her on a Battle of the Eras, she won a few dailies to protect her spot, especially early on in the season. She was able to reunite with everyone in her era, and then she pretty much decided to take on Johnny Bananas after the whole Devon situation happened. She was thrown into a few eliminations in the second half of the season. She had to win her way back, and then she performed pretty well in the final, but the karma twist bumped her from second to third. So she's only been to one final in 5 seasons, but you definitely see her improving, and she's more consistent than the women below her. When it comes to her elimination record, she has won a six and lost three, so she has a 67% rate on that front. At sixth is Michaela Bradshaw, who competed on Spice Life and Allies, USA 2, and Bets and New Threats. So she's only done 3 seasons as I'm recording this, and only two of them are good. So let's talk about Spice Life and Allies. They were forced to go into a second quarantine where the cast pretty much looked up all of her survivor history, so they used that to get her out. She came back on USA too. She didn't really have much connections. In a lot of ways, she herself was a newbie, but she was able to get her alliance. She was able to make certain deals with certain vets, and she just started performing really, really well in the dailies on that season, which will be a consistent thing for her career thus far. She won when she needed to, and then she got to her first final, but an injury took her out, hence her placing third there. On Vet and Nuthret, it was kind of the same thing too. She formed her alliance with her people. She was very transparent with people. She just started doing well in a lot of the dailies. Yet again, so dailies are her strong suit, which you'll notice through these 2 seasons. When she needed to go into elimination, she went and she won them, and she got third yet again on Vet and New Threats. So daily, she's very good at. Elimination wise, she has the 3-1 record, meaning that she won three and lost one. Her percentage rate is 75%. My thing with her is I don't know if she can win a final since she has two third places. Not last, but not first or second. So that is kind of something that we definitely need to look out for. And her social game's always pretty mixed, but she's the type where she sticks with her people. She doesn't overpromise, and she does have that cutthroat nature needed, and she does have that winning spirit in comparison. So at fifth is the Nguyen who competed on War of the Worlds 1, War of the Worlds 2, and Total Madness. So she has made it very deep in all of the seasons that she has been on, which is very impressive. On War of the Worlds 1, she was partnered with West, and she was individual. She was one of the best women performers in the dailies that season, so that's good for her. She got booted in the final traditional elimination of the season, so before the final, but there was a purge afterwards, so she was booted in the end game on her first season. War of the Worlds 2 is arguably her weakest season, which is interesting because that's the season she won. She was well positioned in her alliance. She kind of rode that to the end. She didn't see an elimination that entire season, and she performed well in the final, even though her teammates doubted her. And then on Total Madness, you could definitely tell she had that cocky nature to her, but she won when she needed to. That refers to the dailies and the eliminations. She was playing a lot more cutthroat this season, and she made a lot of unnecessary moves that definitely built a target on her back. But she won when she needed to. It wasn't until the very last elimination that she was taken out by Jenny. So, like Michaela, she's a very strong performer in the daily, so that's a consistent trait of hers. And then with the eliminations, she won three and lost two. So she has a 60% elimination rate. So during her short career, she has held up pretty well. But she only has one finals appearance and two end game appearances. Okay, so now we're at the top of the top regarding Era 4. These women have done more seasons than most, and they are overall very, very, very strong players. Most of them are winners. They all have good elimination records, and they're all very diverse. So at fourth is Cam Williams, who competed on Vendettas, Final Reckoning, War of the Worlds 1, War of the Worlds 2, Double Agents, and All Stars 4. So she's the final non winner on the list. And honestly, as time goes on, whether it's just more Era 4 women doing more seasons or me just changing my mind, I could see myself bumping her down. So she was the rookie of the year or rookie of the season on Vendetta. She went into several eliminations. All of them were against mercenaries. She came out on top. So politically, she wasn't at her best here, but she made it to her first final on Vendettas, though she's at the bottom four. Final Reckoning was an interesting season because she was partnered with Kaylee. She wasn't close to the big alliances of that season, but she wasn't on the outs either. It kind of seemed like she was a subsidiary. Um, but they made it midway before being eliminated, and then they benefited from the Redemption House twist, which caused them to make it to the end game before being punched. Before the final, she and Katie won a few eliminations there, from what I'm remembering. It was really the Purges that was the enemy this season. Where Other Worlds won easily her weakest season. She was booted bef- a bit after the halfway mark. Not really remarkable, but wasn't an early boot. War of the Worlds 2 and Double Agents were very strong seasons for her, where she was in charge politically both the season. She rarely went into elimination. She was performing well in the dailies, and she held her own there. And then she made it to two finals, but she was the bottom for in the World's 2 final yet again and was the runner up, really fighting to escape third on Double Agent. So I think these two seasons are her prime seasons. Then she took some time off. She came back in All Stars 4, and it's crazy because she was the youngest one there, and all of the other players were older than her, not just by age but seasons wise, but she was still very in charge of the politics of that season. She made a lot of poor moves politically, and then she ended up getting booted a bit before the end game, roughly around like two-thirds through the season. So she has a great elimination record as she has won nine but lost three having a 75 percentage win rate. The thing with Cam that I am worried about is her finals performances, where she's always in the bottom four or runner up. I don't know, and I'm doubting whether she has that clutch game to really pull out a win, especially as she's taking more time off. So I don't know if she has that win gene in her. At third place is Olivia Kaser, who competed on Ride or Die's Battle for a New Champion, Battle of the Eras, and Vet and New Threat. So it was clear that she was a very strong competitor, even from her first season, where she did win 3 eliminations, but you can easily poke holes in some of those eliminations, with 2 of them having a lot of audience assistance. And I guess the other one with Raven, she did dominate there. I'll give her proof. She was able to blend in well enough with the people there, and she got to her first final where she got fourth due to the face injury that she suffered there. She comes back on Battle for a New Championship. She's in the Majority Alliance that entire season, but she was very insecure about her abilities, and people kind of seeing it as a fluke and attributing everything to Horacio. And I do think that insecurity kind of bit her in the butt, causing her to make some moves that she shouldn't have made at the end game. But she was booted right before the final. Still another good performance by her. Battle of the Airs is quote unquote her weakest season in placement, though she still made it deep in the season and was booted right before the end game. She's the third last woman booted there. I do think she performed a bit better in the dailies that season compared to Battle for a New Championship, and she held her own against all these older players and more varied legends. Red and Nusret was definitely a strong season for her. She was performing well in the dailies, especially earlier on. She took control. She had her people that she was writing for, but there was an alliance that kind of formed around that, and her back was kind of against the wall. She strategically nurtured herself as well in the second half of the game, who was aligned with the other side, and then she was able to get Yami as a partner, which she didn't want, but it benefited her, and she was finally able to win the season. So she is pretty good in the dailies from what we've seen, maybe not the best at them. And her elimination rate is 5-2, meaning she has won 5 and lost 2 with a 71 percentage win rate. So Olivia always makes it deep. She generally has a good social game for the most part. She can hold her own politically at times, and she can adapt with many different people. And now that she's a winner, she just grows a bunch. So yeah, that's it for Olivia. At second is Casey Clark, who competed on Total Madness, Double Agents, Spice Lives and Allies, Ride or Dies, Battle of the Eras, and World Championship. So Casey immediately came in and proved what a strong player she was and how good she was socially, causing her to get to the end on Total Madness and Double Agents. Though I will say for those seasons, she definitely benefited from the Skulls twist, where she was seen as too strong of a player to against an elimination, and she didn't get the rookie treatment on Total Madness, especially due to this. And then obviously she had a few Big Brother people that she was aligned with there. She did win her third season in Spies, Allies, and Allies, where obviously all the veterans at that point were aligned together. They decided to stick together. You could argue that her performance in the final wasn't that good because she benefited from a partner switch just because she performed poorly in the first day, but she got the win. That's something that most others don't have. Ride or Dice was a meh season, though she was partnered with her brother, who definitely held her back. They were booted a bit before the end game, so still a deep run, just not end game deep. World Championship was a very strong season for her because she had her back against the wall, especially in the second half of the season, where she wasn't in the majority for the first time, and then she was still able to fight her way to the final. Battle of the Eras, easily just a weak season for her, as she was booted right before the individual phase of the game, midway through the season. So she's a very strong performer in the dailies, as she won many in especially Double Agents and a few other seasons as well. She's very consistent in that realm. And then when it comes to eliminations, she has won 7 and lost 3, so she has a 70 percentage win rate there. Overall, a very consistent player and definitely one of the strongest that we have seen, especially in the modern day, and she's also a winner. So at number one is Jenny West, who competed on War of the Worlds 2, Total Madness, and Battle of the Eras. So it's crazy that someone who only did 3 seasons topped the list for the Era 2 woman, but she's just a strong player. She was easily the rookie of the season on War of the Worlds 2, where all the women were scared crapless of her, and despite her team losing, they kept her on because they saw her as a worthy player. Ultimately, her alliance and also teams kind of ran out of numbers, so they threw her in right before the end game, and then she lost to Tori. She saw the mistake that she made in that elimination. She came back for Total Madness, and she was essentially unstoppable. She won a few dailies on that season. She was in elimination a few times. She had her alliances, and she had an easy win on Total Madness, despite some off moves of hers at the end. She doesn't come back until a few years later in Battle of the Eras, where she was kind of on the outs of the Era 4 team because they all had stronger connections to one another. So she decided to work with a lot of the older people. She did get into a few eliminations that she did win, and then she started performing in the dailies. And then ultimately, she just steamrolled the final and she got her second win. So obviously, her winning 2 seasons is why she is number one on this list. And they're two individual wins, so that's even more impressive. Her elimination rate is 5-1, so she won five and lost one, which is an 83 percentage. And I think that's the highest out of everyone here. That's done like more than three. Dating she's good at, but not the best. Socially, it's also not the best, but when you're so dominant in other ways, it really doesn't matter. So, yeah, Jenny's number one. So, that is my updated list on ranking the women of all eras, specifically by ranking them by their era who have done these 3 seasons and are certified veterans. It was interesting looking at this list, especially since there have been a few who have joined the list as they've gotten 3 seasons. And it was interesting to see not only where they would rank, but where they would rank among others and how the others would rank amongst them. And then there are some who did the last 2 seasons. So it's interesting to see how their trajectory changed. But at the same time, some of my opinions just change on some people who haven't done seasons in a while. So there is that. Like I mentioned in the last series of videos, I am probably going to rank all of the men in one list. So it's not going to be irreverent. I'm just going to do one large list, and I'm going to probably do the same with the women. I am going to eventually um review season 41, Vet and New Threat, especially since the new season is filming now, and it'll be a few months before that airs. And I'm going to continue with the real world coverage. So, yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with more content soon. Bye.